Chapter 505. You want me to make peace and release him? Yongsun raised his voice and said angrily. What did you do earlier? There's no way to make peace. Let him prepare for his funeral. It's just a misunderstanding. It's a peaceful society now. Who can be lawless? The magnetic voice of an old man was heard on the other end of the phone. With old Wang's status, he shouldn't be threatened. Moreover, his granddaughter has been kidnapped, which is too much. Get someone to release him. No matter what, we have to consider the big picture. Not to mention kidnapping and murder. These kinds of things could be ignored. We represent the nation. Is there really someone who wants to challenge the authority of the nation? Who is the other party? He's too daring. If something really happens to old Wang's granddaughter, it will be a disaster. Does he really think he's the Monkey King? Even the Monkey King can't escape from the palm of the Buddha, let alone a human. It's too late to talk about this now. I can't even find him. Yongsun had a headache. Get Wang Ji to live in seclusion and not reveal his whereabouts. So serious. The other person was surprised. He had said so much, but Yongsun still said this. It seemed like the other party was really not to be trifled with. It's very serious. It's almost the same as what you said. Wang Ji has really done it this time. There are many things that I can't tell you. You will find out in the future, Yongsun said. After all, only a few people knew about Rinpoche, and he couldn't tell them the specific situation. However, Wang Ji was really in big trouble this time. He was in the top 100 of the world's richest people, and might even be at the top of the list. However, didn't you see who you provoked this time? The person on the other end of the phone still doubted whether Rinpoche would be lawless. In fact, there was no doubt that he was really lawless. He more or less understood Rinpoche's character. After all, there was a department that specialized in studying the two of them. Revenge was a certainty. It would be strange if he didn't take revenge. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that he would seek revenge for the smallest grievance. He didn't usually provoke others and rarely showed his face. However, if someone provoked him, he wouldn't show any mercy. The Jin family in S City was the best example. He directly exterminated the entire family, regardless of whether they were involved in the matter, regardless of whether they were male or female, young or old. His methods were truly chilling. Besides Rinpoche, Qi Zixiao, who was beside him, couldn't communicate with anyone else. It was as if she viewed everyone else as ants. Not only were these two people very important, but their strength was also no different from Superman in the movies. Just today at the scene of the car accident, when the car flipped in the air, he instantly got out of the car and jumped 6 or 7 meters high, while carrying a car that weighed nearly 2 tons. Was this something a human could do? Even though he already knew Qi Zixiao's strength, he was still shocked. He had seen it all through the surveillance camera. Even though he had already known the other party's strength, he was still shocked. He could also feel the other party's inhuman strength, speed, and physical toughness. Wang Ji actually dared to use such an extreme method to attack these two people. He simply had a death wish. If anything were to happen to these two, the country would not let Wang Ji off. Speaking of which, it was funny. If someone wanted to touch these two people, no matter who it was, the country would not let them go. However, these two people wanted to take revenge, and he had to stop them. This was where he was in a difficult position. No matter what happens to Wang Ji this time, break off your relationship with him if you can. Yongsun kindly reminded him. The expression of the person on the other end of the phone immediately turned serious. For Yongsun to say this, it meant that the threat didn't come from the people who had a conflict with Wang Ji, but from the system that he was rooted in. That was why he said that after this incident, he would immediately break off his relationship with Wang Ji. But how could this be possible? Not to mention other things, just the oil rights in the US were a big protective talisman. That's it. I won't say anything else. Yongsun hung up the phone and felt a headache. His men were one step too late at the scene of the car accident and the hospital. Now that the other party didn't want to see him, it would be as difficult as ascending to heaven to find them with their skills. Fortunately, there was still a chance. As long as the other party couldn't find Wang Ji, they would definitely show up. Now he would go to their place to see if he could find them. If they were ordinary people, they naturally wouldn't be able to go back. However, these two people couldn't be viewed with common sense. They had to rest, right? Could it be that they could sneak into a hotel to rest like they did when they were fleeing overseas? One had to know that the two of them were bringing another person with them. The most suitable place for them to stay was naturally their own home. At the thought of this, Yongsun got up and hurriedly walked out of the door. He hoped that the person was still alive. Yongsun guessed correctly. Renbaqian and the Empress had really returned home. He tied the girl up like a mummy, stuffed her mouth with something, and lay on the bed. Until now, he hadn't asked for the girl's name. Regardless of whether she was innocent or not, regardless of how bright her future was supposed to be, this matter could no longer be resolved peacefully. Her fate was sealed because of this. Being born into a rich and powerful family was a good thing. She enjoyed the wealth that Wang Ji brought, and naturally had to bear the hatred that Wang Ji provoked. In Renbaqian's eyes, there were no innocent people. Just like the people from the Jin family. After being in a daze for more than an hour, the Empress walked into his room and said, "Someone's here." Renbaqian immediately woke up and heard the doorbell at the same time. They're gone. It's not good for anyone to shed all pretenses of cordiality. At this time, there were only two groups of people who could be here. One was the people from the Messier 87 department, and the other was Wang Ji's people. If it was the former, he didn't want to meet them now. At this time downstairs, Yongsun pressed the doorbell for a long time. Seeing that there was no response, he gestured to the young man beside him. He immediately took out a tablet and pressed it for a long time. Then the smart door lock made a slight click. Yongsun pushed the door open and saw that the villa was deserted. "Mr. Run, can you say a few words?" Yongsun shouted. "No matter what, the country has its laws. I know that you are angry now, but there are other ways to solve this matter other than purely relying on force. Force can't solve all problems. The country will definitely give you an explanation for this matter." Renbaqian, who was on the roof, curled his lips when he heard the voices in the villa. Force indeed couldn't solve all problems, but it might be the most convenient and satisfying way to solve them. Of course, he wouldn't use other methods to solve problems that could be solved by force. Only when force couldn't solve problems would it be time to show his wisdom. Unfortunately, it wasn't necessary now. "Let's go." Renbaqian pointed to the forest behind him and gestured to the Empress. The three of them disappeared on the roof again. Yongsun shouted for a long time, but there was no response. He then walked upstairs. "Minister, there were people here just now. They just left." Someone came out after checking the bedroom. "Spread out and look for them. Pay special attention to the roof," Yongsun ordered. However, he also knew that the chances of finding them were very slim. The other party was too fast and skilled. If they didn't want to see him, it would be useless even if he dug 3 feet into the ground. After a while, everyone found nothing. Yongsun was already mentally prepared for this. He said, "In addition, a few people go and look around to see if there's anything valuable. Remember, don't mess around. Things that have been moved must be returned to their original state." "Do you want to install 2 surveillance devices and listening devices? As long as they come back, we will know immediately." "No need." Yongsun waved his hand. If the other party found out about the installation of surveillance devices and listening devices, he reckoned that he would be in big trouble. "Minister, there's a discovery. Human limbs were found in a refrigerator in the kitchen." Yongsun was shocked when he heard this and thought to himself, "It can't be? Did these two really kill the hostage? And even leave it in the refrigerator? This is really a fight to the death." When he rushed to the kitchen and saw the contents of the refrigerator, he finally heaved a sigh of relief. The inside of the refrigerator wasn't as miserable as he thought it would be. There was only an arm and a leg in the refrigerator, as well as a liver, stomach, kidney, and spleen that were separately wrapped up and placed in the refrigerator. From the arm and leg, it could be seen that this belonged to a man. "Bring it back for testing and find out its identity," Yongsun ordered. It was impossible for him to ignore such things. However, he had some conjectures that these limbs probably didn't belong to an earthling. There was no need to store the bodies of earthlings like this. Furthermore, Renbaqian had brought the bodies of Earth Wheel experts from the paradise to the laboratory. The limbs here probably came from the Blessed Enclave as well. Furthermore, he had a feeling that the owner of these limbs was probably not ordinary. Otherwise, the other party wouldn't have stored them like this. If he guessed correctly, this corpse was prepared to be handed over to him by Renbaqian. Unfortunately, it was disrupted by Wang Ji's matter. Chapter 506. After Yang Sun and the rest left, Renbaqian returned to the villa. "You're still acting like a thief when you're back home." Renbaqian was a little puzzled. Then, he shifted his gaze to the girl who had already given up struggling. "If it wasn't for you and your grandfather, why would I have to do this?" After walking one round upstairs and downstairs, Renbaqian realized that Tengyu's limbs and internal organs had disappeared from the fridge. He didn't care about this. After all, he had originally intended to bring them to the laboratory. But even so, he still had to talk to Yang Sun about it in the future. Did he think it was his own house just because he wanted to take it? When he returned upstairs, Renbaqian realized that the Empress had thrown aside many things in her cabinet. Among them were the lipsticks and cosmetics that he had bought. "What's wrong?" Renbaqian was astonished. "Someone touched you. I can feel it." Looking at the Empress's expression, it was obvious that she wasn't very happy at this moment. Although it didn't seem like a big deal, and it was just touched by someone, don't forget her identity. After all, she was the emperor of a country. How could she not be concerned when her things were touched by a stranger without her knowing? "I will find trouble with Yang Sun later," Renbaqian consoled her. He leaned against the door and looked at the Empress, who was sitting on the bed. "What else are you looking at?" The Empress raised her head in dissatisfaction. "Good night, Your Majesty." Renbaqian placed his hand on his chest and bowed. After sleeping for an unknown number of hours, he woke up and saw that the sky outside was already bright. After charging the bodyguard's phone, he turned it on and saw a series of text messages and missed calls. Not long after, his phone rang again. Renbaqian picked it up and saw that the name displayed on the screen was Director Wang. Yesterday, he had taken the time to learn more about Wang Ji and his company. He had a better understanding of the Wang father and son. If he wasn't wrong, this CEO Wang was Wang Ji's son and the girl's father, Wang Xuanli. "Mr. Run? I think we can talk." Renbaqian had just picked up the phone when he heard a voice from the other end. "Actually, it's just a small misunderstanding between us. There's not much conflict between us. I think we can resolve this misunderstanding. I would like to express my apologies for the previous incident, and will compensate Mr. Run. There's no misunderstanding. Your father will sit in the car and let me hit him with the truck. After that, this matter will be over," Renbaqian said faintly. "Mr. Run, I can compensate you for what you did in the past. Moreover, both of us are responsible for this matter," Wang Xuanli said. "Where are you now?" Renbaqian suddenly asked. Wang Xuanli paused for a moment. "Mr. Run? If you want to find me, you can come to Tan Province." "It's too far," Renbaqian said, feeling a little conflicted. "Although I would like to meet Mr. Run to resolve this matter, I still have some matters to attend to at the moment. If there is a suitable opportunity in the future, I would still be willing to befriend Mr. Run. Before that, I wonder if Mr. Run could release my daughter first? After I kill your father, if you are willing to be friends with me, I don't mind." Renbaqian couldn't be bothered with him anymore. He immediately hung up the phone and sent a message to Qingqing. "Can you find a hacker to locate a person?" Qingqing. "Who is it?" Renbaqian. "What happened?" "Find someone's location." Wang Ji, the founder of Huaning Energy, was probably at Hong Kong's Wenhua Hotel last night. And his son. Wang Ji only had one descendant. At least, he only had one descendant that was publicly known. As for whether he had any secret illegitimate children, or whether he would cause a commotion among the rich and powerful, Renbaqian wasn't interested at all. According to Renbaqian's thinking, as long as the other party appeared in public, it shouldn't be difficult for a skilled hacker to locate his location through various means. Although it wasn't easy to find a skilled hacker, it was still much easier than finding Wang Ji. "Someone told me to tell you. Leave some leeway in life. I will give you an explanation for this matter. I want a location. Rinpoche curled his lips. Why didn't the other party think of leaving some leeway? Was he regretting it now? It was too late. If it weren't for the Empress, even if he was a man-will expert, it would be difficult for him to escape death in the car. All right, I will try. Wait for my news. After putting down the phone, Rinpoche lay on the bed and continued to sleep. After 3 hours, Chunqing sent a message. I found a supposedly very skilled hacker. He said he will give you news in an hour. Less than 20 minutes later, Chunqing sent another message. Wang Ji is at Hong Kong's Wenhua Hotel and hasn't left. As for Wang Xuanli, he is in Tanzhou. Rinpoche looked at the message and didn't expect Wang Ji to still be at Hong Kong's Wenhua Hotel. Was this confirmation that he wouldn't look for him? And that Wang Xuanli was actually in Tanzhou as well? Ask him to pay attention to the other party's information and inform me immediately if there are any changes. Rinpoche replied and then shouted, Your Majesty, I have found him. He is in Hong Kong. If we drive there, it will take 18 hours, and we will definitely be discovered. As for the high-speed rail, it will take 8 hours, but we will definitely be discovered. In any case, no matter how he went, he would definitely be discovered if he wanted to reach Hong Kong in a short period of time, unless the Empress brought him along and rode on the clouds. However, even the Empress wouldn't be able to travel a distance of 1,500 kilometers. Let's go kill him, and then go back, the Empress said as she appeared in front of the door. He still has a son. If we don't get rid of him, I'm afraid there will be trouble in the future, Rinpoche said. Kill them one by one. The Empress's answer was very simple and consistent with her usual style. No matter what the other party's intentions were, or how many people there were, they would just kill them one by one. I like Your Majesty's decisiveness in killing. Rinpoche tilted his head and smiled at the Empress. The Empress wrinkled her nose, snorted, and went back to change her clothes. Ooh. The girl on the ground couldn't help but struggle when she heard their conversation. Be good and listen to me. When the time comes, I will send you to reunite with your family so that you won't be lonely down there, Rinpoche said gently. The girl struggled even harder, and tears flowed down her cheeks uncontrollably. A moment later, the Empress and Rinpoche arrived at the foot of the mountain and flagged down a car. The Empress appeared directly in front of the car, and the driver had no choice but to stop. How much? I want the car. Rinpoche knocked on the window and said. Crazy, the driver scolded. The next second, Rinpoche grabbed him by the collar and pulled him out. How much did you buy this car for? Rinpoche continued to ask. 230,000 yuan. The driver's face turned ashen. I'll give you 250,000 yuan. Rinpoche took out his phone and saw a series of messages. Rinpoche ignored them, forcibly transferred 250,000 yuan to the driver, and switched off his phone. You may leave. Rinpoche threw the dumbfounded driver, who didn't know whether to be ecstatic or sullen. He drove more than 200 meters back to the road up the mountain, threw the girl in the bushes into the car, and drove all the way south. In order to prevent being discovered too early, Rinpoche even found a small shop and bought 2 masks to wear. The Empress wore tangsangs, and Rinpoche wore Zhu Beijis. No one said that Zhu Beiji didn't want to eat tangsang's meat. Rinpoche laughed mischievously. His voice sounded a little muffled behind the mask. It wasn't illegal to wear a mask while driving, but it was easy to get beaten up with a pig's head, and it was a little stuffy. Less than an hour after Rinpoche left, the driver that he had thrown onto the road was found by the people from the Messier 87 department. After all, it was easy to get hold of Rinpoche's bank transfer information. After checking the direction in which the car was heading, Yang Sen's face turned green. Chapter 507. It seems that he really won't stop until he's dead. One of them was Wang Ji, and the other was his son, Wang Xuanli. At this time, both of them were frowning. This person's identity is a bit strange. On the surface, he looks like a young man who got rich by chance, but he was able to swagger back after killing the entire Jin family. Now he's also so fearless. There's a big problem with this. After all, Our Wang family is not a small force like the Jin family. Even if he has something more important than oil in his hands, it is impossible for the people above to tolerate him so much. He is not a fool. If he dares to do this, he must be quite confident that the country will not do anything to him. If you know what he is relying on, you should be able to understand. Wang Xuanli said in a deep voice. This was also the thing that he could not understand the most. Where did the other party get the courage from? What was the other party relying on? He dared to touch the top 100 richest people in the country? No matter what, you just need to remember that only the living have value, Wang Ji said unhurriedly. No matter what the other party was relying on, as long as the other party was dead, he would have no value. Without value, naturally, no one would care how he died. Then the baby. Wang Xuanli hesitated. It depends on fate. If the other party is willing to talk, then it's okay. But the other party has no intention of talking at all. What happens to the baby depends on her luck, Wang Ji said decisively. I contacted the police, but it was suppressed. You don't have to worry about this matter. Wang Ji snorted coldly. Wang Xuanli hesitated for a moment and finally sighed. The baby is my daughter. With the Wang family's status and the kidnapping, no matter where the police were, they would not neglect it. But at this time it was suppressed by someone. It could be seen that there was a problem. He did not know who intervened in this matter. The baby is also my granddaughter. But now the other party obviously does not want to talk, and even the police have suppressed it. This matter can't be solved by ordinary means, Wang Ji said in a deep voice. Wang Xuanli still had a sentence in his heart. Father, you chose the wrong method from the beginning. After hanging up the phone, Wang Ji pondered for a while and dialed a number. He said respectfully, Old Su, do you have any clues? I can't help you with this. Take care, the old man on the other end of the phone said. Wang Ji's heart trembled. For someone of Elder Su's status to say something like that, it seems like the person behind that person must have reached the heavens. You should go into hiding for now and see if there's any chance to turn things around, Elder Su added before hanging up the phone. Wang Ji's expression changed as he held the phone. At this moment, he really regretted it. He thought that it was just a dog that bit people, so he would just kill it. He didn't expect that the dog was actually Sun Wukong. However, he soon gritted his teeth. Since other methods didn't work, he might as well continue down this path. For me to be able to live to this day and sit in this position, I didn't grow up eating plain rice. Following his soft call, a young man pushed open the door and walked in. Boss, have you contacted him? Wang Ji asked. I've contacted him. He's a Vietnamese, and it's said that he's quite strong. However, their asking price was very high, at least twice the normal price. The main thing is that it's very risky to enter the country, the young man said in a low voice. Give it to them. Wang Ji leaned back in his chair and said. Give them 3 days' time. I'll contact them again. If they can save the baby, give them double the price. Understood. Pour me another cup of tea. After saying that, Wang Ji leaned back in his chair. The other party was very strong, but no matter how strong they were still afraid of bullets. As for what would happen after the other party died, that was a matter for the future. The other party's death was better than his own death. In his opinion, since he had already used external forces, the matter should be resolved just like that. Professional matters should be handled by professionals, and naturally, there would be professionals for killing people. However, he still felt a little uneasy in his heart. What the bodyguard behind the other party said that day made him feel a little incredulous. At night, his plans were suddenly disrupted. Mr. Wang, there are some matters that require your assistance in the investigation. Please come with us. Can't I do it here? Wang Ji asked calmly as he faced the sudden appearance of a few policemen. In his heart, he was thinking that someone was going to make a move on him. Although your identity is special, no matter who you are, you have to go to the police station to assist in the investigation. Wang Ji and Wang Xuanli are being detained for suspected economic crimes. Rin Baqian turned on his phone after arriving in Shenzhen. He was stunned when he saw the text message. No wonder there weren't any interceptions along the way. He was already prepared to be intercepted. He didn't expect Yang-sun to actually do this again. Rinpoche's facial expression changed. The previous one was different from this one. The previous one was just a small fry and didn't affect him much. Naturally, he didn't care about it. However, this time, Wang Ji was courting death. Let's cross the sea. Rinpoche switched off his phone after sending another text message. He then turned around and said to the Empress. The Empress glanced at the girl who was tied up in the back seat and asked, "She brought it too? Let me handle it." Rinpoche drove the car to the suburbs, took out a shovel from the trunk, and dug a hole in the ground. Soon after, he pulled out the terrified girl who knew what he was doing and kept struggling out of the car. "Don't be afraid. There's no pain in heaven, and you won't be alone," Rinpoche said gently. He didn't want to extinguish such a fresh and tender flower, but he also didn't want to leave an enemy behind. After Rinpoche finished speaking, he raised his hand and slapped the back of the girl's head. Bang! A moment later, Rinpoche filled the hole and patted the soil to make it solid. "I feel like I'm the antagonist boss. I feel a little guilty." Rinpoche felt a little regretful. After all, he had just extinguished a flower bud. The Empress rolled her eyes. She didn't feel anything about his nonsensical moaning. Wasn't killing people as natural as eating and drinking? The Empress carried Rinpoche and landed on the other side of the river more than 100 meters in front of her in just a few flashes. The surface of the river behind her seemed to have exploded and shot up into the sky, attracting the attention of many people. However, very few people saw the Empress's silhouette. Only a young couple by the river looked at the two people who suddenly appeared in front of them in a daze. They almost lost their ability to think. "Good evening." Rinpoche chuckled as he was carried by the Empress. He didn't care how strange it was to be carried by a woman at this moment. In the next second, the two of them disappeared in front of the young couple. After a long time, the young couple screamed, "Ghost!" and scrambled away. At the Hong Kong police headquarters, Yang-sun stood in a room. In front of him was a piece of glass, and he could see the scene on the other side. At this moment, Wang Ji was sitting there. No one was giving him a statement. He was the only one in the entire interrogation room, but he didn't feel anxious at all. Instead, he closed his eyes and rested. On the other hand, Yang-sun was thinking about the content of the phone call he had just received. "This is the remains of the corpse of a god." The first sentence almost scared him to the point that he stopped breathing. Of course, it's definitely not what you think. It's just that in the eyes of humans, this person could already be considered a god when he was alive. The time of death should be about half a month, but there's no decay. There's a very strange substance protecting his corpse. However, this substance is decreasing with the passage of time. According to estimates, it will disappear in about a year. The reason why I say this is the corpse of a god is mainly because of the thing contained in this corpse. His DNA is different from humans. Generally speaking, the more complex a creature is, the more junk DNA it carries. It is precisely this uncoded useless DNA that helps higher organisms evolve into complex organisms. However, the amount of junk DNA in this body was much less, which was different from the conclusion of the current research. I'm guessing that this corpse was already evolving in another direction when it was alive, and this evolution direction is more pure. Even now, Yang-sun could not forget how he felt when he received the call. Even now, his heart was still trembling. Boom. Just as he was recalling, the wall beside him was suddenly smashed, and two people appeared in the room. "I hit the wrong wall. It's a little crooked. Over there." Rinpoche looked around, pointed in the direction of the glass, and spoke. He acted as if he didn't see Yang-sun, who was right in front of him. Voila! The glass was instantly shattered. A red shadow passed through the room and smashed the wall on the other side. Chapter 508. When Wang Ji regained consciousness, he immediately realized that he was being dragged by the collar by someone. Looking at the skyscrapers below him, his face turned ashen. Were these the two people he wanted to deal with? Were they really human? Could a human leap tens of meters and run up a vertical wall? Could a human appear tens of meters away in an instant? just like in the mythological novels? From his angle, he could see the figure in red when he turned his head. He could also see Rinpochian, whom the Empress was carrying in her other hand. He wanted to struggle, but he didn't even have the strength to move his fingers. Hong Kong was very small, only about 80 square kilometers. It was less than 10 kilometers from one end to the other, not to mention from the police headquarters. To the Empress, this distance was covered in a flash. In less than 10 minutes, the three of them landed at the place where they left. After landing, Rinpochian moved his muscles and bones. After all, it wasn't a comfortable thing to be dragged by someone and blown by the cold wind. Then he turned to look at Wang Ji, who was paralyzed on the ground, and asked, "Are you surprised? Very surprised? Who are you? Are you really human?" Wang Ji's face was pale and his forehead was covered in sweat. He knew the identity of these two people, but he couldn't believe that they were the people he wanted to deal with. "Didn't you already know?" Rinpochian said as he twisted his neck. "I haven't seen someone so bold in a long time. I can't hide the fact that I was captured by you. I can guarantee that I won't seek revenge on you. If you have other requests, I can also satisfy them." Wang Ji suppressed his trembling voice and said, "Do you think I ran all the way from Shanghai to Hong Kong just to rob you?" Rinpochian squatted in front of him and asked with a smile. "You can't hide it. If I die, you will be in big trouble," Wang Ji begged in a low voice. "I don't need to hide it. Someone will help me hide it. As for big trouble, it's nothing." "You overestimate yourself," Rinpochian said. "Be a good person in your next life. Good people will be rewarded. For example, I help an old lady cross the road when I have nothing better to do. Bad things never happen to me." After finishing his words, he ignored the other party's reaction and slapped Wang Ji's head. The force of a few hundred kilograms made Wang Ji spurt blood from his mouth and nose in an instant. Next, they continued to dig holes and bury them. Just as Rinpochian poked an object with the crowbar, he suddenly realized that the object moved. It was the girl from before. An illusion? Rinpochian had just thought of this. Logically speaking, that slap should have killed him. He was confident in his own strength. Even if his palm didn't kill him, he should be dead after being buried for more than an hour, right? However, just as he was thinking about this, the girl's body moved again. He really didn't die? Rinpochian was astonished. He didn't die from his own palm strike, and he didn't die after being buried for so long. This thought emerged in Rinpochian's mind. He jumped into the pit and brushed off the soil on the girl's face. He stretched out his hand and found that she was indeed still breathing. Or is this girl really not destined to die? Rinpochian squatted on the ground and rubbed the stubble on his chin. "Your Majesty, that one didn't die." "Oh," the Empress replied nonchalantly. "Kill him again?" Rinpochian was a little hesitant. Killing someone once wasn't enough, and he still had to kill someone a second time. He couldn't bear to do it. After all, she was still an underage girl. Previously, he already felt a little guilty. If he were to kill her again, it wouldn't be justifiable. Furthermore, he had recently come into contact with that Nagi monk, Suwen. He had also started to pay attention to these metaphysical things. This matter made him ponder over it a little more. At this moment, that trace of guilt in his heart sprouted in his heart and weighed down on one end of the scale. "Keep her, bring her back to Dayo and let her fend for herself," Rinpochian muttered. He pulled the girl out of the pit and threw Wang Ji into it. "One pit for each radish. One goes in and one comes out," Rinpochian muttered as he filled the pit with soil again. He held the girl's leg and shook it for a long time before throwing her into the back seat of the car. "Your Majesty, are you tired?" Rinpochian threw the shovel back into the trunk, clapped his hands and asked. The Empress couldn't be bothered with him. "It's really inappropriate for your Majesty to follow me around for such a small matter. Later, arrange some people here so that it'll be easier to arrange things in the future," Rinpochian said as he sat beside the Empress. "All right." The Empress nodded her head. "Your Majesty, please choose the people who are tight-lipped, loyal, strong, and able to accept new things. At the very least, they should be able to learn and understand the weapons and equipment on Earth, so that they won't be shot down by machine guns. That would be a joke." Rinpochian leaned back with his hands behind his back. When the time comes, I'll pick some people for you. You can choose from among them, the Empress said faintly. All right. Rinpoche nodded his head and smiled. Actually, it's still more relaxing here. I don't have to consider too many problems. Even killing someone requires me to ponder for a long time. It's not like Tianjin Basin where people beat their brains out every day. You're too soft-hearted, the Empress said coldly. Rinpoche tilted his head, thought for a while, and said, I'm soft-hearted? It's all right. The Empress ignored him. In her opinion, he was still a little soft-hearted. Even though he could come up with all kinds of excuses for killing those people from Tianjin Basin that sounded reasonable, he still couldn't hide it. He was still a little soft-hearted and wanted to kill fewer people. However, this wasn't too bad, so she just let him be. He wasn't like Li Yuanzhu, who didn't kill anyone and was considered soft-hearted. Rinpoche didn't have the strength to look down on all living things. Killing a few people could reduce the number of people he had to kill. Putting on a ferocious appearance could reduce a lot of trouble. Most of the time, trouble was equivalent to death. Even though it wasn't a very smart way of doing things, it wasn't bad either. Woo! A soft sound came from the car. Rinpoche turned his head and saw that the girl was sitting up in the back seat. She was actually awake. She didn't run away or scream. She just sat there in a daze. Rinpoche was a little curious. This girl actually had such a reaction after coming back to life? He got up and opened the car door to take a look. He saw that the girl was sitting there in a daze. She didn't speak or move. Rinpoche stretched out his palm and waved it in front of her eyes. The girl's eyes moved, turned her head to look at him, and then lowered her head to look at her muddy palm. Is she stupid? Rinpoche's mind was filled with a series of question marks. Was she stupid because of his slap? Or did the lack of oxygen in the soil hurt her brain? Or was it both? However, he couldn't be bothered to think about her. He shouted at the Empress, Your Majesty, let's go. There's still one more. Along the way to Tanzhou, Rinpoche used the rearview mirror to observe the girl from time to time. She was still in the same daze as before. Occasionally, she would look at the Empress, look at Rinpoche, or lower her head to look at her palms. She would touch her face with her hands and pat the mud off. Do you hate me? Rinpoche casually asked as he drove. Hate me? The girl dragged out her tone and asked doubtfully. Your name? Name. She seems to be really stupid. Rinpoche used the rearview mirror to observe her for a long time. He felt that she wasn't pretending. At least, the dullness in her eyes didn't seem to be fake. If a 16 or 17-year-old girl like her could deceive him, then it could only be said that all women were born to be drama queens. That's good. It's good to be a little stupid. Fools live much better than ordinary people, especially this kind. Rinpoche smiled faintly. After driving for 8 hours, Rinpoche was finally stuck in a traffic jam as he approached the highway junction of Tanzhou. Or rather, the other party had been waiting here for a long time. Mr. Run, let's go back to Shanghai. If he continued, it would be too much. I can guarantee that he won't have the chance to trouble you again. Yang Sen knocked on Rinpoche's car window and said. After which, he saw the girl sitting in the back seat. Astonishment flashed across his eyes, but he also felt slightly gratified. In the end, the person in front of him didn't kill the girl. If it was only Wang Ji who died, it would make sense. After all, it was Wang Jixian who had gone overboard. Even if Rinpoche didn't make a move, the nation would deal with him. Moreover, Rinpoche was a vengeful person. The fact that Wang Baobao didn't die made him admire Rinpoche a lot. At the very least, Rinpoche had a conscience. Chapter 509. In the end, Rinpoche wasn't able to kill Wang Xuanli. With Yang Sun blocking his way and his promise that Wang Xuanli wouldn't have a chance to retaliate, Rinpoche finally took a step back after burying the culprit, Wang Ji. It was impossible to say that he wasn't discovered on his way to Hong Kong. However, he wasn't stopped, which meant that he had already indulged him once. After all, Wang Ji had used methods that exceeded the rules, so his death wasn't unjust. At this point, it seemed unnecessary to shed all pretense of cordiality and kill Wang Xuanli. Especially since Wang Xuanli was already under control and Yang Sun had made a promise, he wouldn't have a chance to retaliate. The words no chance were very interesting. If he wouldn't retaliate, then someone was suppressing him. However, the words no chance explained some problems. Seeing this, Ren Baqian finally took a step back and returned to Shanghai. After all, he had been on the run for more than 20 hours, and he felt that it was quite tiring. There was still a fool that he hadn't handed over. Now Ren Baqian was sure that this little girl had really become a fool. Yang Sen's words were easy to understand, but she didn't respond at all. According to Ren Baqian, this was a good thing. At least she could survive and live a more relaxed life than most people as a fool. He wouldn't have to kill the same person a second time. After returning to the villa, Ren Baqian first went online to check Wang Xuanli's information. Indeed, he had been arrested for economic crimes. Combined with Yang Sen's words, he probably wouldn't have a chance to get out. Of the two people from the Wang family, one was dead and the other was injured. Huaneng Energy would experience a shock, but it wouldn't collapse. Therefore, the impact wouldn't be too great. However, Wang Ji and Wang Xuanli were arrested one after another, and Wang Ji died inexplicably. This would still cause a shock in society. And at the same time, many rich people would be vigilant and inquire about what had happened. After all, a rich person of the same level as them had fallen just like that. Many people felt sympathy for the death of a rabbit, and were afraid that they would end up like him one day. Very soon, someone discovered a person who wouldn't have attracted much attention, Ren Baqian. Although the witnesses at the scene of the car accident, the hospital, and the Hong Kong police station had their mouths sealed, some news still reached the ears of these people. This made Ren Baqian a mark in many people's hearts. At the same time, they were also somewhat suspicious. Who exactly was Ren Baqian? How much of what was said was true and how much was false? Soon, a video of the scene of the accident fell into the hands of some people. Everyone was shocked when they saw the scene. Did this really happen in reality? Ren Baqian slept comfortably. When he woke up, the first thing he did was to take a look at the girl who was thrown into an empty room. She still had that blank look on her face. After the meal, the doorbell rang again. Ren Baqian opened the door and saw that it was Yang Senator. He raised his eyebrows and asked, "Is there anything else?" "A little. Can I go in?" Yang Sen pointed inside. When Yang Sen entered the house and saw the Empress sitting on the sofa, he cautiously greeted her. After all, the strength of the Empress could easily strike fear in people, especially when they were face to face. It was like a man and a tiger being locked in a cage. "Have a seat." "What's the matter?" Ren Baqian pointed to the side. After Yang Sen sat down, he said, "The limbs in your fridge. I haven't settled the score with you yet." Speaking of this, Ren Baqian raised his eyebrows. "Private rights are sacred and inviolable. You can't snatch my things just because you have the support of the nation, right?" "Wang Ji's corpse has been found," Yang Sen said. His meaning was obvious. This matter had been suppressed. "These are two different matters." Ren Baqian sneered. "What does his corpse have to do with me? I was hired to kill someone the night before yesterday, and was almost run over by a truck. Tell me, what do you want?" Yang Sen asked helplessly. "I want 1,000 of those skunk bombs," Ren Baqian said. When the Empress heard this, her expression immediately became unnatural. She had experienced the power of these things. Just the thought of 1,000 of them was terrifying. "Okay." Yang Sun agreed readily. Ren Baqian's expression relaxed a little. In fact, for Earth, the corpse of a spirit will expert wasn't something that 1,000 skunk bombs could compare to. Nuclear warheads were more like it. However, the nation definitely wouldn't give him such a powerful weapon, and he didn't have anything else that he wanted. Similarly, he didn't want to give people the illusion that they could get something from him without paying any price. "What do you want now? Tell me." Ren Baqian leaned back and sank into the sofa. "Is that corpse the spirit will expert you mentioned before?" Yang Sen took out a recording pen as he spoke. In fact, he didn't have to take it out, but this action made Ren Baqian feel more comfortable. After all, it was better to have things in front of him than to be kept in the dark. "Yes." Ren Baqian nodded. "According to our tests, his lifespan should have reached 130 years, but his cell activity is similar to that of a person in their 30s or 40s. How did this happen? 130 years old? The Empress was astonished. Based on our tests, yes. Is it accurate? It should be accurate. After all, we can roughly determine the age of an item from hundreds of millions of years ago, Renbachian said. What's wrong? Tengyu became famous 40 years ago as a genius. Everyone thought that he was only in his 30s at that time, and many people thought that he had hope of reaching a higher level. I didn't expect him to be 90 years old. The Empress sneered. Everyone has been deceived. Renbachian had a strange look on his face as he had never heard of such a thing. A 90-year-old man still hid his age and pretended to be a young genius. Tengyu was really in a bind. A spirit will expert would be respected no matter where he went. For him to actually do such a thing showed how obsessed he was with showing off. Of course, a 90-year-old spirit will expert and a 30-year-old spirit will expert were definitely different in the eyes of many people. After all, the latter had much greater potential. Even so, this person was really in a bind. We have detected a substance in his body that can maintain cell activity and delay cell death. We speculate that this substance has the effect of removing free radicals and providing energy. If there is progress in this area of research, I don't need to explain its importance. Mr. Ren should be able to understand, Yang Sun said. This was also the reason why he came here. When the results of the tests on this corpse were out, even the higher-ups began to pay attention to it. Renbachian was also very interested. No one could be indifferent to prolonging their lifespan. It should be the spirit, Renbachian said after some thought. As far as he knew, the biggest difference between a spirit will expert and an earth will expert was the use of the spirit. If the lifespan of an earth will expert was slightly longer than that of an ordinary person, it was because of their physical fitness. The lifespan of a spirit will expert was much longer than that of an earth will expert, almost double the lifespan. This should be related to the spirit. It should be something similar to the spirit, but there are some differences. It is more similar to the primordial spirit in novels. It can communicate with heaven and earth, and can also condense heaven-grade weapons. Renbachian explained to Yang Sen's puzzlement. Heaven-grade weapons? The spirit and the vital energy of heaven and earth combine to condense a type of weapon. However, this is too far away for you, Renbachian said faintly. Following Renbachian's words, Yang Sun watched helplessly as a metal chain emerged from Renbachian's head. It twisted a few times like a snake before finally twisting into an S shape, and then an M shape. Yang Sun stared at the top of Renbachian's head and said, "This is?" Huh. Renbachian was stunned. He stretched his hand toward his head, and the metal chain was about to retract. However, the Empress's movements were faster than it. She pulled it out and wrapped it around her hand. Then a spear covered in golden veins emerged from Renbachian's temple and pierced toward the Empress. The Empress's face turned cold. She stretched out her hand and flicked it. The spear immediately let out a clear sound and retracted back into Renbachian's head. Yang Sen's eyes widened. He looked at the metal chain that was wrapped around the Empress's hand and asked hesitantly, "Can I touch it?" No. Renbachian promptly rejected. Did she think that it was a dog chain that anyone could touch? This is a heaven-grade weapon. As long as the person is alive, the heaven-grade weapon will exist. If the person is dead, the heaven-grade weapon will die, Renbachian said faintly. Yang Sun was a little surprised. According to their understanding, Renbachian's strength was similar to that of the selected experts. He should be at the manual level, and was at most a little stronger than those experts. However, according to what he said just now, this thing could only be condensed when one had reached the so-called spirit level, right? How did Renbachian improve so quickly? One had to know that after the selected experts broke through, it was difficult for them to improve. As he thought about it, Yang Sun took out a square plate from his bag and a handle at the bottom. In the middle of the square plate was a screen. After fiddling with it for a while, he aimed the back of the square plate at Renbachian, and the number 158 immediately appeared on the screen. Then he aimed it at the Empress. That thing immediately emitted a green smoke. "What's this?" Renbachian frowned and asked. This is a small thing that was just created in the laboratory. I wanted to demonstrate it to the two of you, but I didn't expect it to spoil. Yongsun laughed dryly. It can detect how much energy a person has in their body. Ordinary adult men have 10 to 15 energy, special forces soldiers have 20 to 30 energy, and experts who have just broken through to the manual level should have 70 to 100 energy. As for Mr. Ren, your energy is 158. The upper limit of this thing is 1,500 energy. As you can see, Miss Chi has exceeded the upper limit. As Yongsun spoke, his heart was in turmoil. This detector had a very special calculation method, and he didn't understand the specifics. However, he understood one thing. What did 1,500 energy mean? This was already equivalent to a human-shaped nuclear bomb. It wasn't an adjective, it was a real human-shaped nuclear bomb. Chapter 510. The detector was just a small interlude. Rinpochen and Yongsen's topic returned to Tingyu's severed limb. As time was too short, not many things had been discovered so far. However, the most important thing had already been revealed to everyone. Since ancient times, humans had never been so close to immortality. Even if their lifespan was doubled, countless people would be willing to exchange their entire family fortune for it. Not to mention the huge impact it would have on society. Now, a person studied for a total of 13 years from primary school to graduation from university. In society, they could work for another 35 years. If they studied for 20 years, they could only work for 28 years. After experiencing a short peak, they would start to go downhill when they had the most experience. 13 to 20 years was too short for current technology. They might not even be able to reach the peak in one aspect. If a person's lifespan was doubled, then a student who studied for 40 years would be able to reach an extremely high level of attainment in one aspect. Furthermore, after working for over 50 years, they would be able to maintain their peak for 20 to 30 years. If there was such a day, the entire society would be filled with all kinds of elites and talents in various fields. A long lifespan would allow countless people to devote their lives to their hobbies without having to weigh the gains and losses in a short period of time. The speed of technological advancement could be increased by 5 times, 10 times, or even more. The technological level that originally required 1,000 years to achieve could be achieved in a short 100 years. It could be said that there would be new changes every day. That would be a beautiful utopia. People would have more time to pursue their ideals, and not for money. After all, in modern society, due to the oppression of life, people had no choice but to focus on how to earn money to support their families at a very young age. And if their lifespan was extended by a lot, young people would have more time to do all kinds of things for the sake of their ideals and interests without caring for returns. Just thinking about that kind of world would make people feel wonderful and excited. The Empress didn't understand what kind of changes would happen, but Ren Baqian could imagine it, and could understand the excitement that Yongsun revealed. Don't expect too much for the time being. This kind of thing isn't that easy to research. Ren Baqian wasn't pouring cold water on young senator. In fact, he also had a lot of expectations. However, it was hard to say to what extent the current technology on Earth could be researched. This is already a straight road. At the end of the road is Rome. What we have to do next is to take one step at a time and keep moving forward, Yongsun said. He already had a direction, and everything was in front of him. Next, he just had to work hard in this direction. It wasn't that he was clueless, but he had a very clear goal. He believed that even if he couldn't see it, his son could. Rinpochen told Yongsun everything he knew about spirit will experts. The Empress would also occasionally add a few words to make Yongsun's trip worthwhile. However, before Yongsun left, he made a request. It was for the various materials in the blessed land. After all, there were many things that did not seem to be related to each other on the surface, but they could allow one to gain a deeper understanding of the blessed enclave, and they might be able to easily solve some of the difficult problems one might encounter in research. Rinpochen had brought too little with him. If it was before, Yongsun would not be anxious. However, after obtaining the corpse, the entire research institute became excited, and so did he. Furthermore, It was very likely that the Messier 87 department and the laboratory would continue to expand, and more talents would be transferred to them. This was good news for him. Regarding this, Runbachian still had the same attitude. He would use things in exchange. Although he didn't mind contributing to this matter, he didn't want to do so. Furthermore, no one would recognize his contributions in the future. On the contrary, it was better for both sides to maintain this kind of equal cooperation. Even if the value of the things that Earth offered was lower, such as some cheap things like skunk bombs in exchange for the corpse of a spirit will expert, he could still accept it. After staying on Earth for another day, Runbachian brought the Empress and the silly girl back to Dayo. Your Majesty, take a rest first. I will see if those people have returned. After Runbachian returned to the room he was in before he left, he looked at the fool beside him who still had a lifeless look on her face, and was looking at the surroundings with a curious gaze. He thought for a while and said, I'll take this girl with me first. After leaving the room, Runbachian threw the silly girl to the guard and asked him to find a place to settle her down. Runbachian was prepared to keep this girl for the time being. When he returned to Dayo, he would bring her back to Lon City and settle her down in a place like the Beast Park to do chores within her capabilities. Runbachian felt that even if she recovered her memory one day, it wouldn't cause any trouble. After all, how much could a 16 or 17-year-old girl know? Furthermore, in this world that was full of danger, she might not even be able to walk out of Tianjing Basin by herself. In a few days she would be sold to a brothel. However, Runbachian didn't want to take this risk, and it was most appropriate to place her not far from him. After the guard took Wang Baobao away, Runbachian looked for Gong Zheng and asked, Are they back yet? Runbachian was naturally asking about those practitioners who went to spy on them. Gong Zheng looked up at the position of the moon and replied, Not yet. It has been more than a day and a night. If there are no accidents, it should be about time. Inform me when they are back, Runbachian said. Under the moonlight, Zhang Chongkong was carrying a man in his 30s in one hand and a long saber in the other as he ran. At this moment, his embroidered clothes were tattered beyond recognition, his hair was disheveled, and his face was stained with blood. He didn't have any of his previous elegance. A few hundred meters behind him, two silhouettes appeared and disappeared like ghosts. Chief, put me down. Green Ghost and White Ghost definitely won't be able to catch up to you. The man he was carrying had a lot of blood stains on his body. There were also 2 arrows shot through his body, one of which penetrated his abdomen, and the other through his chest. This person was the warehouse supervisor of the Golden Ring residence, Zhang Qiyang. The others who went with him were nowhere to be seen. Talk less. I can definitely bring you back. Zhang Chongkong gritted his teeth. Chief, it doesn't matter if I die, but the entire Golden Ring residence needs you to support it, Zhang Qiyang said weakly. How can I face everyone in the residence if I go back alone with 5 people? Zhang Chongkong laughed bitterly. He felt a chill in his heart when he thought about the scouting mission. He didn't expect that there would be a spy in this group. All the practitioners who came from the south would bring experts from the same sect as them to prove their loyalty. This person was no exception. No one expected him to be a spy. Using the head of an Earthwheel expert from the same sect as a price to sneak in as a spy, what kind of price and decisiveness was this? Just thinking about it made Zhang Chongkong feel a chill in his heart. It was precisely because of this person that this group of people directly fell into the other party's trap. Nearly half of the experts died on the spot. The others scattered and escaped, but some of them died under the pursuit of the other party's experts. Among the 5 people from the Golden Ring residence, the inner supervisor, Su Ku, and the deputy supervisor, Lu Jing, died on the spot. The outer supervisor, Ling Ziquan, was blocking the enemy for Zhang Chongkong. Currently, the Green Ghost and White Ghost were still behind, and Ling Ziquan was nowhere to be seen. As for the spirit will expert, Zuocheng, who was in charge of the scouting mission, he had long been entangled. Not only did the other party have spirit will experts, but there were also 2 of them. Chapter 511. Under the night sky, 2 figures covered in blood hurriedly ran to Jiangbei City and landed on the city wall. They turned around and looked at the darkness behind them. Then they sat there paralyzed and gasped for breath. Here they were finally safe. Who are you? The two of them jumped onto the city wall and immediately alerted the guards and patrolling winged cavalry warriors. I'm Shan Yu from Qingjiang sect. I was ordered by Sir Ren to investigate the Wang estuary. Inform Sir Ren that we were ambushed and suffered heavy casualties. Only the two of us escaped. There were people chasing us before, but they retreated when we were close by. The soldiers on the city wall didn't dare to delay and quickly arranged for someone to inform the guards. 3 patrolling winged cavalry warriors jumped off the wall and rushed into the darkness. They returned without success after a while. Ambushed? Only 2 of them managed to escape? Ren Baqian had already laid down in his room to rest when he suddenly heard the news from the guards. He hurriedly put on his clothes and went out. Where are they? On the southern wall. I've already sent someone to bring them here. Gong Zheng said beside Ren Baqian. Ren Baqian's face was gloomy. How could they be ambushed with more than 30 Earthwill experts in Zhuocheng? Furthermore, only 2 people escaped? Did they just stand there and let others kill them? What about Zhuocheng? After walking around the courtyard a few times, Ren Baqian's gloomy face gradually calmed down. It seemed that the other party was well prepared. When he and the others arrived at Jiangbei, they were already prepared and set up a trap for him to fall into. Fortunately, he had arranged for these people to investigate. If the winged cavalry had gone, there would have been many casualties even if they won. Even so, he still felt the pinch as these people were still very useful to him. Putting aside the idea of the embroidered uniform guards, he still counted on these people to appease the people. After all, they were the local tyrants of Tianjing Basin, and it would be much easier for them to appease the people. However, there were so many casualties now. How could he not feel the pinch? After waiting for a while, someone informed him, "Sir, they are here. Bring them to the front hall," Ren Baqian said as he walked toward the front hall. By the time he arrived, he already saw 2 people covered in blood and injuries standing there. "Sir Ren, we were ambushed and suffered heavy casualties. Only the 2 of us managed to escape." One of them stepped forward upon seeing Ren Baqian enter, and his tone was filled with anger and grief. "Sir Ren, please avenge us." Ren Baqian glanced at the 2 of them. He had some impression of the person who spoke. He was an expert from the south. Because of his pair of peach blossom eyes, Ren Baqian had a deep impression of him. After all, a big man with an unshaven beard and a pair of watery peach blossom eyes looked strange no matter how one looked at it. "What's your name?" Ren Baqian asked coldly. "Sir Ren, I'm Shan Yu from Qingjiang sect," the man replied. Ren Baqian nodded and asked, "What exactly happened? How did you get ambushed? How many people did they have? Where is Zhuocheng?" "There's a traitor among us. He lured us into the ambush." Shan Yu's expression was twisted and ferocious as he gritted his teeth. "Who is it?" Ren Baqian asked sternly, his entire body overflowing with murderous intent. The ferocious look on Shan Yu's face disappeared and was replaced by a smile. His figure flashed, and he slapped his palm toward Ren Baqian's forehead. "It's me." Ren Baqian's expression changed drastically. Shan Yu was only 3 meters away from him. For an Earthwill expert, this was a distance that could be covered in the blink of an eye. Ren Baqian could only watch helplessly as the hand got closer and closer to him. He could even feel the wind blowing against his face. He could imagine what would happen to him if this palm hit him. He definitely wouldn't look any better than Sakuma. His brain was warning his whole body, but his body couldn't move at all. He finally realized that the human brain's reaction was much faster than the body's, especially in a life-and-death crisis like this. However, it was useless. Even though countless thoughts were going through his mind, his body couldn't keep up with the current reaction. F***ck. I was too careless. Ren Baqian gritted his teeth. Who did I offend? Why am I always getting assassinated? As he was thinking about this, he saw from the corner of his eye that a man covered in blood not far away from him almost at the same time as Shan Yu. The man raised his hands, and between the gaps of his hands were 6 daggers. He blocked Gong Zheng, who realized that something was amiss and was rushing over. Courting death. Gong Zheng bellowed anxiously. If Ren Baqian was assassinated, he would be finished. He gathered all the strength in his body, completely disregarding the daggers in his opponent's hands, and threw a punch at Shan Yu. However, Shan Yu had already made the first move. Seeing that his palm was about to land on Renbaqian's head, Gong Zheng could only avenge Renbaqian. Shan Yu felt the wind from the punch behind him, but a smile appeared on his face. He came here with no intention of going back alive. His senior wasn't afraid of death, and used his own head to exchange for this opportunity. What did he have to fear? As long as he killed this person in front of him. At this moment, Shan Yu felt a little regretful. The ambush on the mountain was originally prepared for the winged cavalry, but Renbaqian's sudden arrangement of these people to investigate messed up their plans. If they allowed them to investigate, the arrangements that they had made would inevitably be exposed. As a last resort, they had no choice but to change their target. After this incident, he was also exposed. Therefore, he took advantage of the opportunity to assassinate Renbaqian before those people escaped back. In the eyes of the Southern Volunteer Army, Renbaqian was Qi Zixiao's #1 evil dog, and he was even more dangerous than Xiwanya. It was precisely his proposal to pledge allegiance that caused the entire South to be in a state of panic and unrest among the various sections. Unfortunately, he was pitifully weak, and assassinating him was the easiest way to succeed. Without him, the Pledge of Allegiance naturally couldn't be carried out. The Aboriginals' ruthless style would presumably incite the resistance of the entire Tianjing Basin. Even those who had surrendered previously would rebel again. At that time, the Southern Volunteer Army's chances of winning would increase greatly. Shan Yu's thoughts were all flashing in a flash. With a smile on his face, his palm was about to hit Renbaqian's head. He could already see the scene of Renbaqian dying under his palm. Presumably, Qi Zixiao would go crazy, right? He suddenly wanted to laugh out loud and opened his mouth, but the next second, the sharp pain in his hand caused his eyes to widen, and his laughter got stuck in his throat. He saw the tip of a spear drilling out from the top of Renbaqian's head, and directly piercing through his palm. An iron chain wrapped around his hand along with the spear, and then wrapped around his neck before wrapping around his body. It was like a giant python wrapping around him tightly. Heaven-grade weapon? Spirit wheel? How is this possible? Shan Yu opened his mouth wide and wanted to shout, but before he could speak, Gong Zheng's fist had already landed on his body. The sound of bones breaking could be heard as Shan Yu smashed through the wall like a cannonball. Gong Zheng had 6 wounds on his body, and blood was spurting out. When the earthwheel expert who had just injured Gong Zheng saw the golden patterned spear and the iron chain, he was shocked and shouted out what Shan Yu wanted to shout. Heaven-grade weapon. Spirit wheel? How is this possible? When Mount Wu besieged the Empress, almost everyone had seen Renbaqian, but no one knew that he was actually a spirit wheel expert, and had condensed a heaven-grade weapon. One had to know that other things could be deceived, but heaven-grade weapons couldn't. Die. Gong Zheng was ecstatic as his huge body waved his arm and swept toward that person. That person's face was filled with horror. Without saying anything, he fled to the courtyard and ran out of the courtyard. Kill him. Renbaqian was still in shock and subconsciously shouted. Then he shouted again, let him go. Just now he was almost smacked into the scene of a car accident, causing his heart to almost stop beating. The moment the iron chain and the spear appeared, his heart began to beat at a speed that was as if it was about to explode. After shouting, kill him, he suddenly realized a problem. Letting this person go was a good opportunity. How many times had he been assassinated by assassins every day and every month? Did they think that he was easy to bully? Spirit wheel experts were almost at the peak of this world. Except for the top few experts, it was almost impossible to assassinate a spirit wheel expert. Renbaqian wanted to borrow Gong Zheng's mouth to spread the news that he was a spirit wheel expert. Who would dare to assassinate him then? Others could play the pig to eat the tiger, but he couldn't. In terms of strength, he was a F***king pig. As long as his strength hadn't increased to a certain level, there would always be all kinds of people who had designs on him. There might even be his accomplices among the surrendered practitioners in the city. If he didn't want this to happen again, he might as well play the tiger to eat the pig. Chapter 512. Chief put me down. Zhang Qiang's eyes were filled with tears. I have no regrets now that Chief has treated me so well. Cut the crap. Zhang Chongkong spat out a mouthful of blood. He had been hit by Green Ghost's palm just now and had put some distance between them. They were still 15 kilometers away from Jiangbei. In the past, this distance would have been covered in an instant. But after experiencing a bitter battle and breaking out of the encirclement, and then carrying another person and running for dozens of miles, he felt that his speed was getting slower and slower. The qi in his body had long been depleted, and he could only move forward by squeezing out his body's potential. However, every cell in his body was groaning in pain. Just now, Green Ghost's palm had also caused quite a bit of damage to his internal organs. Feeling the two ghosts behind him that were like maggots in his bones, he felt that the 15 kilometers that could be covered in an instant in the past was now like a natural moat. TSK, 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 TSK. Chief Zhan, the Golden Ring Residence Master, is actually like a stray dog. Is this generation of the Golden Ring Residents so afraid of death? No wonder the Golden Ring Residents surrendered. If your sect elders knew about this, they would probably vomit blood. A fluttering voice came from behind the two of them. Not only is he a stray dog, but he is also as timid as a mouse. He is not slow, but his hands are a little weak. Another voice also seemed to come from several directions, making it difficult to pinpoint the specific location. Green Ghost and White Ghost, I will definitely take revenge another day. Zhang Chongkong spat out blood as he cursed. Why another day? Isn't today the best opportunity? The previous voice continued to laugh strangely. Zhang Chongkong clenched his teeth and did not say a word. It's about time. Chief Zhan doesn't have much strength left, right? Why don't you stop and let us send off the famous timid Golden Ring Residence Master? As the voice spoke, the two of them gradually increased their speed, closing the distance from Zhang Chongkong from 50 to 60 meters in a short period of time. Golden Ring Residence Master, you can't escape. Why don't you obediently stretch out your neck and wait to be executed? TSK, TSK. The two figures were like two wisps of green smoke that gradually closed the distance between them and Zhang Chongkong. They chased after Zhang Chongkong and ran forward parallel to him. Stay here. A figure suddenly floated up and landed behind Zhang Chongkong. The jade-green dagger in his hand stabbed toward Zhang Chongkong's back. Get lost. Zhang Chongkong exerted all his strength and slashed his saber behind him. The 9 golden hoops simultaneously emitted a crisp sound of metal clashing. This demonic sound was secretly learned by your ancestor from our Wangui sect. Do you think it will work on the two of us? The shadow behind Zhang Chongkong floated in the air and dodged the blade. Then it sped up and stabbed at his back. TSK Tisk, it's better to stop struggling. Chief of the Golden Ring Residents can rest in peace. Another figure appeared in front of Zhang Chongkong, and a grayish short sword appeared in his hand. Zhang Chongkong did not say a word. His body charged forward fiercely, but he felt a chill on his back, followed by pain. Fresh blood spurted out from his back. He wanted to tighten his muscles to stop the bleeding, but he couldn't do it at all. Manor Lord. Zhang Qiang, who was being carried by Zhang Chongkong, struggled violently. He extended his arm to block the short sword that was aimed at Zhang Chongkong. A hand soared into the sky. Zhang Qiang clutched his severed arm. A pained expression appeared on his face, but he did not make a sound. Zhang Chongkong's eyes were bloodshot. He roared angrily and activated all the muscles in his body, forcing out the last trace of his strength to sprint forward. TSK Tisk. There was another burst of strange laughter. The two of them continued to follow Zhang Chongkong, looking for an opportunity to attack. They were like wolves on the mountain, wanting to take a bite out of the other party's flesh with every bite. At the same time, they had to ensure their own safety. Otherwise, they might be killed by their fellow disciples while they were heavily injured. Even though the green and white ghosts had been together for many years, they still retained this habit. They would spend the least amount of effort to kill the enemy, and sometimes even give up some opportunities. If it weren't for this characteristic of the Wangui sect disciples, Zhang Chongkong would not have lasted until now. Furthermore, the two of them knew that Zhang Chongkong would definitely not be able to hold on any longer. He would not be able to make it to Jiangbei. Even Zhang Chongkong himself knew that he was already using all his strength to maintain his running state. He looked at the torches on top of Jiangbei's city wall several kilometers away. That was where Painting Fairy and Kai Xian were. However, a sense of despair arose in his heart. He was afraid that he would not be able to return. I hope that Black Bamboo Academy's principal Bai Qian will treat my Golden Ring residents well. Zhang Chongkong thought sorrowfully. At this moment, a black shadow dashed over from the front, giving Zhang Chongkong a glimmer of hope. That was the direction of Jiangbei City. The person coming from that direction was one of his own. Brother, help me. I am from the Golden Ring residence. Zhang Chongkong roared with all his might. After shouting, he could no longer hold on and fell to the ground. Tsk tisk. The green and white ghosts, who were following behind him, saw the opportunity and pounced at Zhang Chongkong with strange laughter. Ah! At this moment, Zhang Qiang, who was already seriously injured and had his wrist cut off, broke free from Zhang Chongkong's arm and shielded his back. Two short knives and short swords pierced into his body at almost the same time. Zhang Qiang spat out a mouthful of blood, and his face revealed a sinister expression. Die. Die. Using his remaining hand, he threw a punch at one of the figures. However, that figure turned into a wisp of green smoke and disappeared. On the other hand, the other person slashed down with the short knife in his hand, almost cutting open Zhang Qiang's chest and abdomen. Then he immediately drifted away. The green and white ghosts stood on the left and right, cautiously staring at the figure that was dashing over. Qiang! Zhang Chongkong roared and struggled to get up. At this moment, that figure ran in front of Zhang Chongkong, kicked him away, and continued to run. When the green and white ghosts saw this scene, they paused for a moment and completely didn't know what was going on. Could it be that this person who ran over from Jiangbei City wasn't the other party's reinforcements? From the looks of it, it didn't seem like it. At this moment, another 4 or 5 figures dashed over in this direction. Their heavy footsteps smashed against the ground, and every step produced a loud bang. The momentum of their running made one suspect that even a city wall in front of them wouldn't be able to stop them. The pupils of the green and white ghosts instantly narrowed. If they couldn't confirm the identity of that person just now, they could immediately confirm the identities of these people. Winged cavalry. Only the aboriginals would run around recklessly and have such a barbaric and fearless momentum. Go! The two of them almost instantly turned into green smoke and disappeared into the night sky. 10 seconds later, those figures appeared. When they saw Zhang Qiang's corpse, one of them immediately went to check on Zhang Chongkong, who had been kicked away. He's still alive. Send him back to the city. One of them carried Zhang Chongkong and Zhang Qiang's corpse into the city. Chapter 513. In the south of Jiangbei City, hundreds of winged cavalry warriors were riding on their mounts and spreading out to search for those who had yet to escape. Every once in a while, there would be a person wearing infrared night vision goggles. With this thing, anything that emitted heat would not be able to escape their eyes. After going deep into Great Xia and fighting against Great Xia in the north, the winged cavalry was already used to some very convenient and practical modern technology. For example, radio stations, walkie-talkies, night vision devices, binoculars. Now that walkie-talkies couldn't be used, they couldn't communicate with the other teams at any time. This made the winged cavalry feel somewhat inconvenienced. It is easy to go from frugality to extravagance, but difficult to go from extravagance to frugality. Fortunately, the night vision goggles and binoculars could still be used, so they didn't immediately return to their original state. There are people 600 steps to the southwest. One ran away and the other is lying on the ground. Immediately, someone went to check it out. He's dead. He just died. His body is still warm. A moment later, the winged cavalry warrior spoke again. 2,000 steps away, there are 5 people fighting. Surround them. Don't let him escape. Su Xing, it seems like your reinforcements are about to arrive. I'll spare your life today. I'll take your head another day. Even though the winged cavalry hadn't arrived yet, the sound of hooves could be heard a long time ago. Among the 4 people present, one of them was the sect master of the Soul Mountain sect, Su Xing. The other person was also wearing the uniform of the Soul Mountain sect. Both of them had injuries on their bodies, but they were much better off than Zhang Chongkong. You want to leave? Where are you going? Su Xing, who had been at a disadvantage all this while, sneered. He raised his sword and used the strongest trapping sword technique of the Soul Mountain sect. Gusts of sword wind surrounded the two of them, trapping them in place. They stopped in the distance. Since that's the case, I'll kill you first. When the two people who were trapped realized that they didn't hear the approaching winged cavalry, their eyes flashed with murderous intent. However, both of them avoided clashing with Su Xing's sword and saber. Seeing that the winged cavalry wasn't coming over, Su Xing was a little anxious. He immediately opened his mouth to shout, but the other party suddenly attacked fiercely, causing him to be flustered. The spiritual mountain sect is here. Fortunately, at this moment, another person let out a long roar, causing Su Xing to instantly become spirited. This time, it was the other two's turn to be anxious, and they immediately attacked fiercely. Fight! Stop him! One of them shouted. After that, the aura around his body continued to rise. After that, he shouted, star-shattering. Following that, a cold light rose from his hand. It was a cold light in the darkness, as though it wanted to split the darkness apart, making it hard for people to open their eyes. However, Su Xing's expression changed drastically. He quickly retreated. The sword in his hand was almost invisible. Only his arms kept waving, colliding with the cold light that separated the darkness. When the cold light disappeared, Su Xing stood on the ground, gasping for breath. His body was covered with wounds so deep that his bones could be seen. Go. Quickly retreat. The man who had just used his sword turned pale. Another person carried him and said, Sect Leader Su, we will meet again. With that, the two of them retreated into the darkness. However, the numerous saber lights caused the two of them to return at an even faster speed. They looked at the darkness in horror. Leave. Where are you going? There's no need to see each other again. Stay here. Following a rough voice, many figures that were much wider than ordinary people appeared in the darkness. Dozens of figures surrounded the five of them. Su Xing's face revealed a pleased expression. However, he was also slightly puzzled as to how they came so quickly. Winged cavalry. One of them said with a trembling voice and a bitter face. Do you choose to die now, or do you want to be captured and hung on top of the city wall for a few days before dying? A winged cavalry warrior wearing night vision goggles sneered. No matter what choice they made, they would still die. The winged cavalry didn't want captives. Fight! The three of them looked at each other and rushed toward the figures that surrounded them. Immediately, 3 winged cavalry warriors came forward. After a while, there were only severed limbs and a few broken swords left on the ground. Did anyone else escape? One of the winged cavalry warriors asked Su Xing. They all escaped separately. I don't know the situation of the others. Can you lead the way? All right. Subsequently, Su Xing and the other person traveled with this group of winged cavalry warriors. Along the way, he was extremely surprised that these winged cavalry warriors could actually detect living beings in the distance, be it humans or animals. This made it a lot easier for everyone to move around. The source of all this should be the strange things in the eyes of some of the winged cavalry warriors. Renbaqian followed the guards to an empty courtyard. The 2 doctors in Wu City, as well as the practitioners of the martial arts world who were skilled in traditional Chinese medicine, were all gathered here. Can he still be saved? Renbaqian looked at Zhang Chongkong, who had a large dent in his chest, multiple injuries, and a weak aura. Although his injuries are very serious, his body is very strong, and his life is not in danger, one of them said. Not bad. It's good that he can live. Renbaqian nodded and said to the few people sent by the Lingshan sect. Someone go and inform Painting Fairy of the Golden Ring residence. You guys do a good job. If you do a good job, you will be rewarded. Renbaqian nodded at the doctors in the courtyard before leaving with his men to wait for news. Sir, how should we deal with the corpse? Someone asked as he dragged the corpse of Shan Yu, who had previously assassinated Renbaqian. Hang it on top of the city wall and let the birds eat it. In addition, arrange for a few people to hide in the surroundings. Maybe someone will come to snatch his corpse. Kill them all. Renbachian waved his hand. When he entered the hall, he saw the Empress sitting in the middle and sipping wine. Captain Gong Zheng of the Winged Cavalry was embedded into the wall. Why aren't you sleeping, Your Majesty? I have nothing to do, so I came out for a walk. The Empress looked at him, and was relieved to see that he was fine. She got up and was about to leave. The night is long, and I'm not in the mood to sleep. Why don't I accompany you for a walk? Renbachian laughed. I'm sleepy, the Empress casually said. Thank you for your concern, Your Majesty, Renbachian said from behind the Empress. The Empress had just stepped out of the door when she gently kicked the door sill with her heel. A piece of wood immediately brushed past Renbachian's arm and smashed into Gong Zheng's head, who was embedded into the wall. I just can't sleep, the Empress said faintly. Renbachian smiled, sat back in his chair, and said, Captain Gong, Her Majesty has left. Oh. Gong Zheng jumped down from the wall and saw that his head was still swollen. He then rubbed his head and said angrily, I was almost buried by Her Majesty. Fortunately, you are fine. Otherwise, I would have been buried with you. The night passed, and Renbachian waited until dawn. News began to come back, and at the same time, a few people were sent back. After another 2 to 4 hours, all the winged cavalry warriors that were sent out returned. Finally, including Zhang Chongkong, a total of 8 people came back alive from this reconnaissance mission. Excluding Zuocheng, only 7 Earth Will experts returned. Of the 3 from the Lingshan sect, 2 returned, and of the 5 from the Golden Ring residents, 2 returned. Ling Ziquan, who Zhang Chongkong thought was dead, actually didn't die. However, if he was discovered a little later, he would probably be dead. Of the 20 people from the other sects, only 3 returned. Renbachian comforted everyone, got them to record their contributions, and then arranged for everyone to recuperate. Although there were heavy casualties this time, some of the other parties' arrangements were exposed, and the spy, Shan Yu, was also exposed. Otherwise, if they had unknowingly stepped into the other party's trap during the attack, the winged cavalry would have suffered heavy casualties. This was considered a blessing in disguise. At the same time, some information about the Wang estuary was brought back along with these people. Chapter 514. Seniors, my master and martial uncle risked their lives just to enter Jiangbei City and inquire about the other party. Now, my master's corpse is hanging on top of the city wall. I hope that seniors can help me bring his corpse back. On a hillside, a young man around 15 or 16 years old was begging the people around him with a mournful look. Everyone looked embarrassed when they heard this. After a long time, someone sighed and said, There's no need to think about this anymore. The Aboriginals are powerful, and there are hundreds of winged cavalry warriors in Wu City. Not to mention, there are also Qi Zixiao and Xiwanya. No matter how many people go, they won't be able to return, and will only increase the casualties. Don't tell me that my master's corpse will be left on top of the city wall for the birds and beasts to eat? The young man looked sad when he thought of the scene outside Jiangbei City during the day. Will the corpses of those seniors be the same? As soon as this was said, 2 more people lowered their heads slightly. Some of the corpses hanging on top of the city wall belonged to their fellow disciples. One of the men opened his eyes and said in a deep voice, Everyone here is seeking benevolence and getting benevolence. If I die, I don't want anyone to snatch my corpse while knowing that it's a suicide mission. There's already a big gap between the 2 sides. If there are more casualties in order to snatch the corpses, I'm afraid there's no point in fighting this war. Everyone nodded. It was a good thing for the young man to remember his master's kindness, but it was too unrealistic at this time. Hee, kid. Why don't you go yourself instead of begging them? If you're lucky, you might even come back alive. A series of strange laughter sounded in the forest. Stop trying to mystify us. Someone snorted. You're just sending him to his death, another person said. Although this young man's status and strength weren't worth mentioning, his master had sacrificed a lot for the greater good, and no one wanted to see him throw away his life. Aren't all of you waiting to die here as well? The voice in the forest gradually faded away. The young man on the hillside took a deep look at everyone before turning his head and going down the hill. Why are all of you here? Ren Baqian asked the people in front of him. Du Laolu, Tonglan, and all the students appeared in front of him. Previously, only Shirgan's team came with Shiwanya's team, and Ren Baqian didn't pay much attention to them, and allowed them to move freely in the city. He didn't expect the others to come as well. After parting for nearly 2 months, everyone gathered together and exchanged what they had seen and heard along the way. When Ren Baqian heard the noise from afar, he felt a sense of familiarity that he hadn't felt for a long time. Yes, it was the feeling of the market downstairs. In particular, Shirgan and the others were spitting saliva everywhere. It was as if they had personally witnessed the Empress facing off against all the experts of Tianjing Basin at Mount Wu. It was only when Ren Baqian arrived that they restrained themselves a little. I heard that Her Majesty is fighting the enemy here. How can we sit in the back and wait? Du Laolu raised his head and said in a rather heroic manner, You came all the way here to deliver your head? Ren Baqian sneered. We have nothing to do in Valley City. We can't just sit there and wait, right? Her Majesty, Teacher General Shi, and the winged cavalry are all here. So it should be safe for us to come over, right? Another student immediately asked. It was a girl with above-average looks. In fact, Aboriginal women were rarely ugly. In any case, Ren Baqian had never seen one before. The girl's name was Shiryu, but she had nothing to do with Shirgan. In Dayo, Shir was a common surname. Shiryu was born into a commoner family and wasn't very outstanding in the past. However, after traveling for 2 months, she seemed to be much stronger than before. This way, we can follow teacher from time to time and listen to his teachings. Teacher hasn't lectured for a long time. Another student said. Ren Baqian grinned. He liked good children who loved to learn. In that case, let's find a place to stay today. The exam will be held in 3 days. Let's see if you have forgotten what I taught you before. Everyone was immediately confused when they heard about the exam. Take a break first. Come back at night and I will assign you homework. Ren Baqian continued. After hearing this, everyone was even more confused. They just wanted to come to the front line to take a look, and thought that Ren Baqian wouldn't have the time to take care of them. They didn't expect to be greeted with exams and homework. Everyone immediately glared at the student who had just spoken. Their gazes were fierce, and they couldn't wait to beat him up. I heard that teacher is invincible in Tianjing Basin. The world is in chaos and harms the common people. Teacher should be busy with those important matters. Don't worry about us and just let us stay here. Ren Baqian pondered. Are these brats praising me or scolding me? Where did they learn this from? Cut the crap. Where's the homework that I assigned to you? Hand it in first, and then get lost to rest. Also, Shirgan and your team, hand over your homework as well. I will assign homework for you in the afternoon. You just have too little homework. Ren Baqian said with a straight face. Everyone's faces immediately twitched. After everyone left, Ren Baqian sat back in the hall and casually flipped through everyone's homework. Everyone had done it, but the content was unbearable to look at. Their understanding of Tianjing Basin was basically limited to the rebellions, the large number of bandits and gangs in the city, and the division of power between the various sections. Very few people mentioned the people's livelihood. Only a few people made him feel that they were pretty good. At least they really used their brains. Among them, Shirgan was the best. Perhaps because of his upbringing, he was the son of the great elder and knew more about the country than others. Not only did he analyze the situation of the ordinary people in Tianjing Basin, but he also proposed some management methods. Simply put, it was to suppress and divide the people and combine strength and gentleness. Next was Shiryu, who also wrote a lot about his views on the ordinary people. There were also a few students who came from ordinary backgrounds. They focused on the ordinary people, but their views weren't as profound as Shiryu's. What the others saw were just superficial things. As for the worst homework, it wasn't beyond Ren Baqian's expectations. It was Tonglan. Looking at the words kill, kill all, and slaughter in the homework, Ren Baqian's expression became a little unnatural. How distorted was this little Lolita's worldview? Tongluan came from an upper-class background, was very talented, and had almost never encountered any setbacks. However, it was also because of this that she naturally divided people into different classes. Those who were talented were considered the upper class, those who weren't talented were considered the middle class, and those who weren't aboriginals were considered the lower class. The upper class ruled over the middle class ruled over the lower class, and the lower class could die. Strength was paramount. It wasn't strange for such a Chinibyu mentality to appear in her mind. It had to be said that she didn't classify Renbachian as the lower class because Tong Xingye valued him, and he was the husband chosen by the Empress. After most of the students rested in the afternoon, Renbachian called everyone over. This is the best homework. Renbachian threw out a homework book. Everyone saw the homework book on the table and looked at each other. Shirgan immediately revealed a complacent expression and pretended to be low-key. These few books are considered to have passed. Sure, you Sujianshan Gulai? You guys and a few others have passed. Renbachian threw out a few more books, and a few of them looked relaxed. Everyone else has failed. Shirgan's homework has a total of 813 words. This homework will be based on Shirgan's homework. Shirgan will copy it 5 times, those who pass will copy it 10 times, and those who fail 50 times. Renbachian said. The complacent expression on Shirgan's face immediately froze. The others looked at him as if he was their enemy, who asked him to write so many words. As for Tongluan, Renbachian paused and looked at the little girl in the crowd. Copy it 100 times. Why? Tongluan immediately jumped up like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. Why did she have to copy it 100 times while the others copied it 50 times? Her little face was fierce as if she was going to pounce and bite someone in the next moment. Do you know how to sing Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star? Renbachian asked. What is it? No. This is why you have to copy it 100 times. An hour later, Tongluan stormed into a house in a hut. She stared at the 2 students inside and asked, Do you know how to sing Twinkle, Little Star? No. Bang. Ah. 2 big holes suddenly appeared in the wall. In another room, Tongluan grabbed the other 2 students and asked, Do you know how to sing Twinkle, Little Star? Yes. The student who heard the noise in the next room quickly replied. How do you sing it? Chapter 5:15. After sending a group of students to do their homework, Renbachian continued to be busy with some matters in the city. After all, only 8 out of the 30 people who went to investigate returned. Many of those who died were the pillars of some small sects, and many of them were sect masters. Their deaths caused a disturbance in many of the sects in the city. Renbachian had to put in some effort to appease them. Although it was said that swords had no eyes and death was a common thing in this world, everyone was mentally prepared. However, these people were still working for him and spying on military intelligence. At present, the hearts of the people hadn't been subdued yet, and they were only forced to surrender. Looking at the fact that only less than 30 people participated in the investigation of the Wang estuary, it was clear that most of the Earthwill experts only wanted to surrender to save their lives and didn't want to risk their lives. Then, just as he assigned them to do something, they immediately suffered such a huge loss. If they didn't deal with it well, these people's morale would fall apart, and it would take more effort to appease Tianjing Basin after the war. Fortunately, the other team that went to Mount Gui was completely led by Qingyun's sword from the hidden village, so there weren't any mishaps. Although they were discovered by the other party and had a fight, these people from the hidden village were all experts of the older generation. Even among the Earthwill experts, their strength was considered to be among the top. They knew each other very well, and had a better rapport with each other. After discussing with the Empress, Renbachian prepared to first establish the embroidered uniform guards. In any case, he would give these people an identity and let them feel at ease. Of course, even if it was established, they could only be regarded as non-staff. Simply put, they were temporary workers. The Empress would need to return to the imperial court to issue this order, before it could officially become a department with authority. Similarly, The period from the establishment to the official status was also an opportunity for Renbachian to observe the internal structure and select the personnel. He used the status of temporary workers to drive these people to continue working for him, and at the same time, observe and adjust this organization. After all, this kind of thing was very unfamiliar to him. Although he had some experience from his predecessors, this world was too different from Earth. Therefore, he had to observe and make changes bit by bit. After 2 days, Renbachian gathered the higher-ups of the various sections. There were less than 100 people who sat opposite Renbachian. Most of them were Earth Will experts, and there were a few Man Will experts. Among them, some of the Earth Will experts were rejoicing, while the Man Will experts were mournful. These were the pillars of the sect that had died, and there were no more experts in the sect. There were also a few who were still bandaged up, such as Zhang Chongkong, Su Qing, and the others. Although Zhang Chongkong's injuries were extremely serious, thanks to the high level of medicine in this world, he was able to walk with the help of Painting Fairy. Renbachian took a look at everyone's expression before speaking slowly. Everyone, I'm sure everyone knows about what happened a few days ago. A spy from the rebel army actually managed to sneak in and cause such a result. My heart aches. All of you who died were outstanding talents and pillars of Dayo. I will definitely make them pay the price for this. What I want to say is that some sect masters and elders have died, and the sect's strength has greatly declined. They might be a bit worried about the future. I can promise you that I will treat all of you equally. All the contributions of those who have sacrificed their lives for the country will be recorded and bestowed upon their descendants. After listening to Renbachian's words, the Man Will experts looked a little more relaxed. They were really worried that Renbachian would throw them away after using them. With Renbachian's promise, they felt a little better. This time I have gathered all of you here because Her Majesty is concerned that all of you are serving the country without any status. She is preparing to set up a new department called the Rearguard Commandery. Remember when I said that all of you can leave Tianjing Basin and walk freely under the sky? Some of you will even become officials in the Imperial Court. From commoners to high-ranking officials in the Imperial Court, your chance is here. It's earlier than I expected. The Rearguard Commandery is on the same level as the various departments in the Imperial Court. The Commandant is a rank 3 official, 1 rank higher than me, Renbachian said. Renbachian replied. He was now a rank 4 fighter. Of course, no one really regarded him as a rank 4 fighter. The Rearguard Commandery will have 1 Commandant, rank 3 official, 2 Guard Commanders, rank 4 official, for Guard Commanders, rank 4 official, 8 Commandants, rank 5 official, for Town Provost, rank 5 official, and 10 Qianhu rank 6 official. Below them, there are also Deputy Qianhu, Baihu Secondary Baihu, Zongqi and Xiaoqi. Among them, the Qianhu governs 1,000 people, the Baihu governs 100 people, the Zongqi governs 50 people, and the Xiaoqi governs 10 people. Renbachian gave a simple explanation. In fact, he had divided the Rearguard Commandery into 2 parts. They were divided into 2 guard stations, one for Tianjing Basin and the other for the Yun Nation, to supervise these 2 places. In his mind, the Yun Nation had already been classified as a part of Dayo. Many of the people below were surprised. According to Renbachian, 10 Qianhu were equivalent to 10,000 people. In that case, the Rearguard Commandery was almost at the same level as the 5 protectorates of Dayo. Renbachian was actually so generous? Would the Imperial Court agree? Furthermore, could Dayo afford to support so many people with its financial resources? No one felt that there was anything wrong with risking one's life for one's future. If it was really like what Renbachian said, many people would be interested. Not all the people in the martial arts world were above the common people. If there was a chance to become an official in the Imperial Court, not many people would reject it. However, the prospects of the Rearguard Commandery that Renbachian mentioned were too bright for many of them, and they didn't dare to believe it. Would the Imperial Court really agree to such a department? Could the remnant citizens of Tianjing Basin really do it? Would the Imperial Court really treat them like this? Many people had doubts in their eyes. Renbachian didn't mind the doubts in everyone's eyes and continued. What is the purpose of living in this world? Power? Wealth? Status? Strength? As long as you join the rearguard commandery, you will at least have a chance, even though it can't be said to be easy, especially in terms of strength. As far as I know, none of the medicinal herbs from the 60,000 mountains have entered Tianjing Basin in the past 70 years. Ren Baqian threw another bombshell at everyone. These days, Ren Baqian had been chatting with Gong Zheng about the practitioners in Tianjing Basin. This made Ren Baqian understand how important the medicinal herbs from the 60,000 mountains were, whether it was for the aboriginals or the remnant citizens of Tianjing Basin. However, due to the difficulty of keeping them, only a few could be transported to Lan City, and it wasn't easy for the winged cavalry to purchase them. As for Tianjing Basin, it was even more scarce. It could be said that not a single strand of grass had flowed into Tianjing Basin in the past 70 years. It could be said that for the practitioners in Tianjing Basin to have 18 spirit will experts, it could be said that this place was a place of outstanding people. After all, there were many experts in the Revolutionary Army who survived and retreated here, and the talents of their descendants weren't weak. There were only about 10 million people in Tianjing Basin, but the proportion of talented practitioners was higher than that of Great Xia and the Yun nation. Thanks to this, it was much easier to clean up Tianjing Basin this time. These words made Ren Baqian realize something that could firmly tie these people to Dayo's war chariot. Regarding the rearguard commandery, only a small number of Earthwill experts were interested in it, and most of them were suspicious. Initially, only a few dozen people participated in the spying. Although most of them surrendered, they didn't want to risk their lives. However, after hearing these words, they were immediately moved. Sir Run, what do you mean? The medicinal herbs in the 60,000 mountains will also be controlled in the future. The people of the rearguard commandery can report their needs and purchase them according to their official rank. The higher the official rank, the more they can obtain. Sir Run, how does the rearguard commandery join? If they are at the intermediate level of the Earthwill level, what position will they have? Chapter 516. Ren Baqian gave everyone 3 days to consider. As for joining the rearguard commandery, a spirit will expert would start from a Qianhu, an earth will expert would start from a Baihu, and a man will expert would start from a Zongqi. However, Ren Baqian gave the few small sects that had lost their pillar of support a Baihu. He gave them the opportunity. As for the future, if they didn't reach the Earthwill level, Baihu would be their upper limit. The upper limit of the Earthwill level would be a Qianhu. After settling the matter, Ren Baqian was satisfied with everyone's reaction. He went to look for the Empress and asked for a few more loyal winged cavalry warriors to form the foundation of his power on Earth. After all, the previous incident had made him realize that without his own power, it wouldn't be easy to do many things. Furthermore, Earth would always be his base camp, and he couldn't wait any longer to establish his power on Earth. Subsequently, he selected the 3 fiercest-looking winged cavalry warriors from the dozens of fierce-looking men. Aboriginals generally looked very fierce, and the winged cavalry warriors were even more so. On one hand, they had a murderous aura and demeanor, and on the other hand, they had all kinds of scars. These 3 were the kind of people that would make people turn around and run when they saw them from 100 meters away. They had fierce-looking faces, knife scars, bald heads, and murderous gazes. They were 1.8 meters tall, and weighed more than 150 kilograms, which was more than half the weight of Tyson. Ren Baqian felt that if he saw such people on the streets in the past, he would definitely hide at least 100 meters away. As long as they had a tattoo of a little red sunflower on their foreheads, humans and animals wouldn't come near them. He let the Empress take a look at the 3 people he had chosen. After having dinner with the Empress, he called them over again. Stand there and hold each other's hands. Don't move, Ren Baqian said. Although the 3 were baffled, they still followed his instructions. Ren Baqian stood there while the 3 fierce-looking brothers held hands. This scene was really beautiful. Stand there and don't move, Ren Baqian reminded them again, and then placed his hand on one of their shoulders. The air around them was somewhat distorted. In an instant, The scene in front of them changed from darkness to light. The three of them looked around and were instantly dumbfounded. The moon, the courtyard, and the house were all gone. They were in a luxurious room that they had never dreamed of. The floor was made of jade, and the surrounding walls were made of unknown materials. Even without using their brains, they knew that they were not ordinary materials. Furthermore, there were many strange things around them. Principal Ran. This is? The three of them looked around in bewilderment. Paradise. Rinpoche looked at the expressions of the three of them, and casually made up a story. Where is the fairyland? God realm. Rinpoche immediately corrected himself. These Dayo people had the concept of gods, but they didn't have the concept of immortals. Sir Run, why are you scolding me? That winged cavalry warrior looked aggrieved. Get lost. Rinpoche was amused by his stupidity. This is another country. It's very far from Dayo and can only be reached by relying on a hearthstone, Rinpoche said. Oh, the three of them nodded as they looked around curiously. In their hearts, since Rinpoche was the one who brought them here, he would naturally bring them back. Not everyone had the opportunity to go abroad. They had to take a good look so that they could brag about it when they returned. Sir Run, what's this? Television. What about this? Air conditioning. What about this? Go sit at the side and wait for me to change, Rinpoche said impatiently. He left the three of them downstairs and went upstairs to change his clothes. However, before he could finish changing, he heard the sound of something being smashed downstairs. After he changed his clothes and went downstairs, he saw that the glass on the side of the sofa had been smashed into pieces. Who smashed my glass? Rinpoche glanced at the three of them. This is called glass? I thought there was nothing. One of the winged cavalry warriors rubbed his head and said in a muffled voice. The other two nodded and said, Indeed, there doesn't seem to be anything. Rinpoche shook his head. This bunch of idiots. He reckoned that it would take a lot of effort to teach them about Earth. Perhaps he should find them a tutor. Sit down. I'll tell you about the situation. Rinpoche pointed to the sofa. Creak. As the three of them sat down, the sofa began to creak. Boom. The three of them reacted quickly and jumped up the moment the sofa collapsed. Sit on the floor. Rinpoche shook his head helplessly. Didn't Her Majesty say to listen to me? Rinpoche sat on the sofa and said faintly, Yes. If Principal Run has any instructions, we will listen. The three of them immediately got up from the floor and cupped their hands. Sit. This place is different from Dayo. Rinpoche waved his hand. This place is very far from Dayo, so far that it will be difficult to reach in a lifetime. You have to use a hearthstone to go back and forth. I've already said this before. What I'm going to say next is that you will be living here from now on. Ah. What about the army? What about Her Majesty? The three of them were shocked and jumped up from the floor again. Sit down. This is Her Majesty's temporary imperial residence, so someone naturally needs to guard it. Rinpoche pointed to the floor. Oh. The three of them immediately understood. It won't just be the three of you. There will be other people arranged. There will be a rotation in the future, and someone will come to replace you at a certain time. Then you can return to Dayo, Rinpoche said. The people selected this time weren't married, so they naturally didn't have any concerns. Furthermore, the Aboriginals had a long lifespan, so 10 years wasn't a problem for them. In fact, they had been here for 10 years, but only 3 years had passed in Dayo. After hearing Rinpoche's words, the three of them immediately relaxed. Wasn't it just guarding? Although they were only responsible for killing people in the past, they had to obey Her Majesty's instructions. This place is very important, very important. It's hundreds, thousands, and tens of thousands of times more important than places like Great Xia and the Yun Nation. You will slowly understand this in the future. Therefore, Her Majesty has arranged for you to come here because she trusts you and hopes that you can do a good job. Rinpoche had an expression that said that the party and the country had entrusted this important task to them. Sir Run, don't worry. We will never let an enemy leave alive. Anyone who dares to violate this place will be killed without mercy. The three of them were greatly moved and immediately guaranteed. You are not allowed to kill. Later on, I will tell you when you can and can't kill, Rinpoche said with a toothache. Rinpoche spent the whole afternoon explaining the general situation on Earth to the three of them, but he wasn't sure how much they could remember. Later on, I will find a teacher for you. Remember, all you have to do is listen to what he says about this world. You are not allowed to answer any questions they ask about Dayo, Great Xia, the Yun Nation, or the Chun Nation. If anyone inquires about this, let me know, Rinpoche instructed. Understood. We are very tight-lipped. The three of them grinned. Rinpoche nodded. He still believed in the winged cavalry on this point. He then made a phone call and ordered dinner for 60 people. Rinpoche fully believed in the appetite of the three of them. Then, he called Xinfeng and asked him to prepare a few extra-size clothes for Fatty. At the same time, he also asked him to bring a tailor over tomorrow. The three of them sat on the ground in front of the television and watched the atomic bomb explosion cautiously. Sure enough, whether it's for the Empress or for them, only the atomic bomb is the way to go. Rinpoche couldn't help but laugh when he recalled how the Empress looked when she watched the atomic bomb. Everything that happened when the Empress first came here was worth recalling. Unfortunately, the Empress was becoming more and more like an otaku. The rest of the dinner was as Rinpoche expected. The three of them almost licked the bottom of the plates clean, but they still looked like they hadn't had enough. The night passed, and Rinpoche came down the next morning to see the three of them watching Transformers with great interest. They had already reached the 5th installment. Before going to bed last night, he taught them how to use the remote control to watch a movie, and then chose Transformers for them. Sure enough, Transformers was a man's romance, and the three of them watched it with great interest the whole night. Of course, Rinpoche reckoned that even if he showed them Happy Goat and Baldy Chong, they would probably watch it with great interest the whole night. Chapter 517. When Xinfeng entered the villa, she was obviously frightened by the three burly men sitting on the floor. They were bare-chested, wore tattered leather shorts, and had crisscross scars all over their bodies. She made the most feminine gesture that Rinpoche had seen since he met her. She stepped back and wrapped her arms around herself. Although she was indeed a woman who looked like a man, Rinpoche sized her up. Rinpoche sized her up and said, "You don't have a chest. What's there to hide?" "Boss, you are too mean." Xinfeng glared at him fiercely. Good advice is unpleasant to the ear, and good medicine is bitter. The truth is always unpleasant. Don't mind it, Rinpoche said casually. Xinfeng glared at Rinpoche again before asking, "They are?" "They are your colleagues and my bodyguards. I recently discovered that Earth is too unsafe," Rinpoche said, feeling a little conflicted. Bodyguards. Xinfeng glanced at the three people inside. Their faces were ferocious, and their bodies were long. Their muscles were bulging, and there were all sorts of scars on their bodies. The coldness in their eyes when they occasionally turned their heads would cause one's heart to shiver. No one would dare to make a move on such people if they just stood there. "Did you bring the plus-size clothes that I asked you to bring? Where's the tailor?" Rinpoche asked. Xinfeng turned around and brought in a few bags on the ground outside the door. Following her was a woman who looked like a young married woman. She wasn't very beautiful, but she was graceful and revealed two dimples when she saw people. "Hello, I'm Jinhee from Jinhee Clothing," the young woman greeted. "Well, please make some clothes for the three of them." Rinpoche waved to the three people behind him. "Come over and let her measure you." Ah. Only then did Jinhee see that there were three men who looked like bears behind her. This gave her a fright, and her eyes started to shine. When the three of them stood up, their muscles bulged like a dragon swimming under their skin. Coupled with their scars, they were full of deterrence. "Sir Ren, change the way you address me." Rinpoche turned his head and glanced at the three of them. "This way of addressing you sounds weird. Just call me." Rinpoche pondered. The Empress was the boss, but what was he? Lady Boss. "Call me second boss." Second boss. Although the three of them didn't know what that word meant, they still corrected themselves in time. "Who's the big boss?" Shinfeng asked even though she already knew the answer. Second lady boss. Ren Baqian answered without hesitation. You really know how to beat around the bush. Shinfeng smiled. Ren Baqian also felt that it was very complicated, but he had no choice. Shinfeng could directly address him as boss. If these three were to address him as boss, how would they address the Empress in the future? Lady Boss. This title wasn't bad, and Ren Baqian really wanted to hear it. But they are easy to beat up. Stand properly. Let her measure you. Ren Baqian pointed at the three of them as they stood there. Jinhee took out all kinds of tools from her bag and prepared to measure them. Ren Baqian flipped through the clothes that Shinfeng had brought. They were wearing jeans with extra weight, an oversized jacket, and an oversized t-shirt with all kinds of patterns. If he hung a metal chain on each of them, they would immediately transform into hip-hop singers. Clothes for this body type usually have to be custom-made. It's already not bad to be able to buy these. Shinfeng hid beside Ren Baqian and spoke while paying attention to the three burly men standing there. To her, these three people were full of deterrence. Moreover, she knew some things that ordinary people didn't, which made her extremely wary of these three people. However, she still asked, Boss, where did you find these people? Well, a few days ago, I went on a trip to the ravine and found a village. The people there are so poor that they can't eat and rely on primitive methods like hunting in the mountains to survive. The nation has said that those who get rich first will help the rest. The ancients also said that those who get rich will help the world. Seeing that their lives are so difficult, I recruited them to be my bodyguards. They look suitable. Even if they can't fight, it's good to put on an act to scare people. Ren Baqian was full of nonsense. Shinfeng felt a toothache when she heard this. A village so poor that they can't eat? Introduce me to a place that I can guarantee that they will all be able to eat. Those who get rich first will help the rest? There's nothing wrong with this, but why does it sound so strange coming from your mouth? Also, these three people can't fight? I reckon that even a special forces soldier wouldn't be a match for the three of them. Just by looking at their murderous aura, one could tell what kind of people they were. Hey, don't touch me, it's itchy. Do you see my fist that's as big as a casserole? Do you want to take a look? One of the guards on the other side shouted, raising his fist with a look of displeasure. You have to be meticulous and measure it bit by bit. Otherwise, if you mess it up, it will ruin the reputation of my shop. How did you train your muscles? You're so strong. The guard's voice sounded like he was squeezing water out of the last two sentences. This time, it was Ren Baqian's turn to feel a toothache. He saw Jinhee touching here and there. Why are you measuring people's chest muscles? Why are you touching my abdominal muscles? That guard's face turned red. Then the two of them trembled together. That guard wanted to hit them, but Ren Baqian ordered him not to move, so he trembled. Jinhee, why are you trembling? Did you find him? Ren Baqian glared at Shinfeng with an unfriendly look. Jinhee Clothing Factory is quite famous anyway. I thought you wanted to make clothes, so I specially found a famous tailor for you. Shinfeng coughed twice after finishing her sentence. Cough cough. How much longer? I haven't finished measuring this one yet. What's the hurry? Jinhee said as she pinched that guard's back. Quite perky. Jinhee clicked her tongue in admiration. Stand still. Ren Baqian saw that the guard's eyes were glowing fiercely and hurriedly said, This lady, we aren't selling our bodies or our skills, so please conduct yourself with dignity, Ren Baqian said. It's inevitable that we'll touch each other when we're measuring clothes. I've never seen you guys so troublesome. A few grown men are afraid that I, a woman, will take advantage of you, Jinhee said. I'm not afraid, I'm just taking advantage of you, Ren Baqian muttered to himself. Today he had finally seen it for himself. If a woman became coquettish, then there was really nothing for a man to do. However, you're really bold. This is a teddy and you still want to molest a Tibetan mastiff? Is this Jinhee really a tailor? Ren Baqian glanced at Shinfeng again. Fortunately, after Ren Baqian spoke, Jinhee finally restrained herself and conveniently took advantage of the three of them. It took her more than 10 minutes to measure their sizes. Even the thickness of the base of the thigh and the thickness of the ankle were measured. Ren Baqian increasingly felt that this wasn't like a tailor's, but more like a physical examination. Mr. Run, do you want to make a set? Many wealthy businessmen make clothes here, and my skills aren't any worse than those overseas. He looked at Ren Baqian with glowing eyes. Forget it. Ren Baqian waved his hand. Make 3 suits and 3 sets of sportswear for each of you. In addition, make another 30 sets of clothes of the same size. Ren Baqian was prepared to bring a few winged cavalry warriors with similar figures next time. This way, the size of the clothes wouldn't be too much of a problem, and would save him some trouble. Shenfeng opened her mouth. Make another 30 sets? Bring another 10 people? In addition, find me a few cooks. They need to be able to cook in a big pot, and have decent cooking skills. Let's start with 10 people. Ren Baqian said, contact the developer and see if there are any houses for sale nearby. I remember that Wang Ji, who was previously investigated for economic crimes, has a villa nearby, right? How are we handling it now? With the addition of 10 winged cavalry warriors, this house was obviously not enough. Ren Baqian was going to find a villa nearby to use as a dormitory. As for money, he could get a loan anyway. Since he wasn't spending his own money, he naturally wouldn't feel bad. Chapter 518. On the second day after the 3 winged cavalry warriors arrived on Earth, Shenfeng left in the morning. Ren Baqian received a call from Yang Sun, which was naturally about these 3 people. This news had already reached the ears of some people in the upper echelons of the country. Everyone wanted to know what Ren Baqian wanted to do. Earth is too dangerous. With a few people, we can avoid what happened last time, Ren Baqian said. That was just an accident, Yang Sun reiterated. The wreckage of the flying motorcycle has already been checked, and it should have malfunctioned. That car accident was also an accident, Ren Baqian said faintly. Don't worry, I won't bring too many people, Ren Baqian said. Not just these 3. Yang Sun immediately became alert. There will be a few more, but not too many. There are so many people on Earth. Are we lacking a few dozen people? They are different. Don't worry, they are all the same. I will restrain them and abide by the law. I'm the most law-abiding person, and so are my subordinates. In any case, it was a foregone conclusion that Ren Baqian would bring people over. This incident also alerted the people in the upper echelons, and made some people ponder. On the one hand, Ren Baqian could bring people over. If he really brought a large number of experts, many people would feel uneasy. After all, these people were so strong that ordinary firearms were useless against them. In a city, such an expert's destructive power was no less than a small army. On the other hand, since he could bring people over so easily, could he also bring people over? Ren Baqian previously said that it would be difficult, but it didn't seem like that at all. Perhaps there would be restrictions. Just seeing that he only brought 3 people, it was obvious that there would be restrictions. In other words, it could be done as long as it was within the limits. So what were these restrictions? Besides going through Ren Baqian, was there any other way? Many people wanted to know the secrets here, but they didn't dare to risk angering Ren Baqian at this time. After all, they had to rely on him in all aspects. Especially after he brought people over, it became more troublesome to deal with. They must be checked for diseases. As you know, different environments have different strains of bacteria, which may have a great impact on Earth. Are there any new diseases related to me now? Ren Baqian asked casually. After such a long time, whether it was a disease from Earth or that world, there had never been a spread between the 2 worlds. After chatting with Yang Sun for a while, Ren Baqian finally agreed to give the 3 of them a test. It was the same as bringing pets from abroad back to China, and they needed to go through inspection and quarantine. However, Ren Baqian believed that Yang Sun wanted to conduct a physical examination on the 3 of them. And the facts proved that what he thought was right. The quarantine was conducted at the laboratory of the Messier 87 department. Ren Baqian brought the 3 of them, who couldn't take their eyes off everything, to the Messier 87 department for a full 5 hours of various examinations. While Ren Baqian and Yang Sun were chatting at the side, The three of them injured more than 10 so-called quarantine officers. The one who suffered the most serious injury had a small portion of his bones broken. And this was under the circumstance that they were being lenient. The reason was that someone had touched their balls. A black off-road vehicle was parked a few hundred meters away. Two men in it used binoculars to look at a villa in front of them. In front of the villa were three bears who were wearing baggy sweatpants and were bare-chested, revealing their muscles and scars. One of the three men was lifting a black car and exercising up and down, while the other two were sparring. Within the range of their sparring, it was as if an excavator had passed by. The lawn was almost completely gone, and mud was flying everywhere. This extremely mysterious scene gave the two of them a headache. Are all the people in the blessed enclave like this? One of them asked. I don't think so. It is said that there are also civilians there. The other man replied. I always feel that this scene is like an alien invasion of Earth. Seriously speaking, it is. Aren't there aliens everywhere outside of Earth? The two of them observed the movements there while communicating with each other. Is the Blessed Enclave considered Earth or an alien planet? I feel that the Blessed Enclave might be on the other side of Earth. Behind us is the United States. Runbachian stayed on Earth for 4 days and finally made arrangements for the three of them. At the very least, he taught them some things that they had to abide by. For example, they weren't allowed to kill people. If an outsider wanted to know the purpose of their visit, they weren't allowed to hit Shinfeng, the chef, the cleaner, the food deliverer man, or the police. It was really difficult for them to understand who they could and couldn't hit in a short period of time. In the past few days, he had also recruited 5 tall and strong chefs. After all, chefs who could stir-fry in large pots were generally of good physique. Although they looked quite strong, compared to the three of them, they were probably like a husky and a Tibetan mastiff. After tasting the food, Runbachian felt that the taste of these chefs was just passable. The advantage was that they could still taste passable when stir-frying in large pots. This was very important. This level of taste was enough for the winged cavalry warriors. As for a house, they hadn't found one yet, so the three of them could only sleep on the floor in the living room. However, this didn't matter to them. Sleeping outdoors was a common thing, let alone sleeping on a jade floor. Until now, the three of them still firmly believed that the floor was made of jade. Let me remind you again that this place is different from Dayo. You aren't allowed to kill people here. If they aren't enemies, you aren't allowed to hit them, especially the chefs. You aren't allowed to use the chefs as fitness equipment. Runbachian said sternly. Also, I will find a teacher for you in the afternoon and evening. Don't hit him. Don't hit him. Don't hit him. Don't threaten him. If he asks you anything, just say that you have been living in the mountains and don't know anything. Don't worry, second boss. The three of them pounded their chests with their fists, making drumming sounds. Runbachian was worried that their hearts would jump out of their throats if they punched them. That's all. I'm going back to accompany Her Majesty. Sir Ren, ask Colonel Li to help me tell Xiangyu from Jinyu Pavilion that I can only visit her in a few years. One of the winged cavalry warriors scratched his head. His name was Li Zhe. Li was a small surname in Dayo, and Runbachian hadn't seen many of them. Other than him, he had only seen Colonel Li, Li Tanhua. Don't worry, I will find a good family for her. Runbachian sneered. Oh, that's good too. That winged cavalry warrior scratched his head. She is already married. I will find someone else when I get there. Runbachian sighed. Sometimes talking to this bunch of idiots was like punching cotton. The next second, he disappeared into thin air with the big and small bags beside him. Some of them were skunk bombs, some were students' exam papers, and some were binoculars and infrared detectors. He also asked for some energy detectors, which were the ones that Yang Sun had brought over previously. However, he could only get them the next time he came back. Is he really gone? The three winged cavalry warriors saw Runbachian disappear into thin air and reached out to touch him, only to feel empty air. That's amazing. That Hearthstone must be a great treasure. By the way, how will the patrol be arranged? Sir Ren didn't say. One-on-one. The loser will have to patrol at night. I'm hungry. Let the chef cook. We will fight after dinner. Yesterday's red braised pork tasted good. I exercised a little today, so I feel like I can eat more. Let him cook more. The three of them were only slightly surprised for a moment before they focused their attention on eating. Sir Ren seemed to have mentioned that someone called teacher was coming. What does he look like? Ask if anyone comes later. If he is, then stay. If he isn't, then beat him out. In the afternoon, the three of them had just finished their 3-hour lunch and were reminiscing about the delicacies when the doorbell suddenly rang. Who is it? A winged cavalry warrior opened the door and looked outside with a fierce look. Sorry. My name is Ran. I made an appointment with the owner of this house. He said he was looking for a private tutor. A bespectacled young man stood outside the door. When he saw the burly man looking at him fiercely, his legs immediately went soft. Chapter 519. When Renbaqian returned to Dayo, the first thing he did was to put up a bounty notice. Su Qing, surnamed B, identity unknown. One day, after drinking outside the city, he saw a cow and chased her. After being discovered, he panicked and fled. This person is wretched, corrupt, and guilty of the most heinous crimes. If anyone in the know reports and verifies the case, he will be rewarded with 100 taels of silver. There was a portrait of Su Qing attached. Although it didn't look like him, it was enough. Renbaqian took out the notice and handed it to Zuoleng, who was also the nephew of Lingshan Sex Suocheng. Although there weren't many tasks assigned to them these days, Renbaqian felt that this person was quite smart and handled matters appropriately. Get someone to make a few copies and post them on the city gates of each city, Renbaqian said. Yes. Suocheng scanned it with his eyes, didn't ask anything, and left. He naturally knew about Su Qing's identity, but he didn't know about the collusion between Su Qing and Renbaqian. It was normal for Renbaqian to issue a bounty to arrest the envoy of Great Xia. However, this crime was really disgusting. If he were to be accused of such a crime, he would probably want to die. Half a day later, the bounty notice was posted in important places in Jiangbei City. After that was Wu City. After that, this wanted poster that filled people's imagination was quickly pasted to the surrounding cities. Many cities had just posted the notice, and it attracted a lot of onlookers. After all, these cities were currently in the hands of the Aboriginals. Although there were people who comforted them, they were still anxious and didn't know what would happen in the future. Therefore, as soon as the notice was posted, it was immediately surrounded by people who wanted to see what was written. What does it say? I don't know. There's a portrait, and it looks like a bounty notice. No matter where one was in this world, illiterate people were the majority. Cough cough. A middle-aged man wearing a patched robe walked into the crowd. He coughed, and the people around him immediately made way for him. There was no imperial examination in Tianjing Basin, and there were no channels for promotion. As a result, scholars weren't very respected, and many people couldn't bear to see them studying at home every day. However, whenever this happened, it was their turn to show their skills. Mr. Jing, what does it say? Many people behind him asked. Mr. Jing's face showed satisfaction. His most glorious time was every time when he was like this. When he saw the contents of the notice, the corner of his mouth immediately twitched, and then he flew into a rage. There's actually such a person. It was a heinous crime. This kind of person deserves to die. What did he say? Everyone was curious. Damn it. Mr. Jing cursed again before reading the contents of the notice. The crowd immediately burst into an uproar. No way. Is that true? I've heard of it. It happened in Jiaozi village. A young man in the village was discovered. What happened next? Someone immediately asked. Then he disappeared. I don't know where he went. With this opening, the atmosphere became even more lively. For a moment, everyone forgot about the Aboriginals taking over and what they should do in the future. Instead, they began to discuss this matter excitedly. 2 days after Renbaqian handed the notice to Zuoleng, he gathered the people from all the sects again. Everyone, what's your decision? Renbaqian sat at the head of the table and leisurely looked at everyone while holding a cup of iced Coke. Sir Run, I'm willing to join. Someone immediately stood up and answered. Me too. I'm willing to serve Dayo. Renbachian's gaze paused on the person who said that he was willing to serve Dayo. This person was a little clever, but that was all. However, it was impossible for everyone in this world to be smart. If everyone was like an old monster, he wouldn't be able to survive. Renbachian remembered that there were about 40 Earthwill experts who were willing to join. This meant that apart from the people from the hidden village, more than half of the remaining 63 Earthwill experts were willing to join. Every sect had one. However, Renbachian also noticed a problem. Most of the sects left one person behind. After thinking for a while, Renbachian understood that they didn't want their sects to completely become vassals of the imperial court. The person who was left behind to carry the burden. This included the Lingshan sect. As for the Golden Ring residents, except for Painting Fairy, the remaining 4 Spirit Will experts all spoke up. Even Zhang Changkong was the same. It seemed like the Golden Ring residents was really determined. As for those Man Will experts who had lost their chief and elders, they naturally wouldn't give up this opportunity. Renbachian looked at Qingyun Sword and Zhuacheng, who both closed their eyes and remained silent. That's it then. Those who joined the rearguard commandery can stay. The rest can go back first, Renbachian said faintly. After a while, the courtyard was half empty, and only about 60 people remained. Congratulations to everyone for making a wise choice. Renbachian placed the coke on the table and raised his voice. You are the first batch, the easiest batch to join, and also the batch with the most opportunities. In the future, you will be working for the Imperial Court and Her Majesty. Therefore, no matter what happens, as long as you abide by the laws of the rearguard commandery and Dayo, the Imperial Court and Her Majesty will support you. At the very least, I will be your backing. I don't know what you want. Maybe it's money, maybe it's power, maybe it's women, maybe it's treasures. Renbachian looked around at everyone and then said forcefully, Sure. As long as you do what you should do. I don't need to say anything else. If you need various kinds of medicinal herbs, as long as they are available in the 60,000 mountains, you will have the opportunity to get them. At least in a few years, you will be able to say goodbye to your former selves. The rearguard commandery implements 2 distribution systems. One is your salary, which is easy to understand. At the same time, everyone has a fixed amount of medicinal herbs to purchase. What Renbachian said at this moment was what everyone wanted to hear the most. Power and beautiful women didn't mean much to most Earthwill experts, but the quota to purchase medicinal herbs was what they needed the most. Sir Run, how many medicinal herbs will be purchased? You can write down the items you need and hand them in. After that, the quota will be determined according to the function, rarity, and value of these medicinal herbs. At the same time, I have another important news to inform you. Just now, I said that there are 2 distribution systems. The most important is the second system, which is the points system. No matter what mission you do, you will get points. The more dangerous the mission, the more points you will get after completing it. As for points, you can exchange them for things that you can't buy even if you have money. For example, heaven-grade weapons. I think everyone wants them, right? Renbachian smiled at everyone. Everyone immediately became spirited. For example, secret manuals. Whether they are passed down from the Hao Nation, Great Xia, the Yun Nation, or even the various sects. As soon as Renbachian said this, everyone's faces suddenly changed. Many of them were ecstatic, but many of them looked gloomy. Sir, this must not be done. Someone immediately stood up and objected. He couldn't care less about offending Renbachian. The martial arts of a sect were the foundation of a sect. How could it be passed on to outsiders? Renbachian had already expected this reaction, and naturally had a countermeasure. Don't worry. Each of your sects can choose 3 core martial arts manuals, and submit their names to me. They will only be placed in the Royal Library, and will not be included in the points exchange list. Furthermore, the martial arts exchanged for points must not be passed on to others. Otherwise, regardless of whether it is the imparter or the learner, they will be killed without mercy. Renbachian's words made those people's faces ease up. In addition to heaven-grade weapons and secret manuals, there are also treasures. Some rare treasures will also be included in the points exchange, such as Kirin blood, the blood of a true dragon. Renbachian thought of the husky in the pond in the palace. Back then, the seventh prince of Great Xia used the blood of a true dragon to exchange for its essence blood, right? Although it was useless to him, it should be of great use to some people. Furthermore, this was just an example. If someone really needed it, they could just give it some blood. In any case, it was such a big lump that occasionally giving some blood was beneficial to its health. Sir Run, are you serious? Upon hearing this, many people couldn't sit still and immediately stood up. Whether it was heaven-grade weapons or secret manuals, there would always be a chance if they put in more effort. However, some treasures really couldn't be obtained anywhere. Just these two things that Renbachian mentioned were enough to make many people desperate. Of course, Renbachian laughed. There are 7 drops of the blood of a true dragon in the palace. This is the essence blood found on the corpse of an ancient true dragon, not the little worm in the pond in Great Xia. In addition to these, there are also the cloud crystals. Other rare treasures will gradually be included in this list, Renbachian added. This time, the rest of the people couldn't sit still anymore. If treasures like the blood of a true dragon and the blood of a Kirin were only needed by a small number of people, then everyone needed the cloud crystals. This precious mineral was obtained from the stomach of the flower eagle, when Renbachian returned from the iron mine in Mount Lupan. As long as a little bit of it was added during the forging of a weapon, the weapon would be filled with spirituality. It could be said to be a dream come true for everyone. Most importantly, this kind of thing was also very useful when a spirit will expert was condensing a heaven-grade weapon. Even if the cloud crystals couldn't move them, as Renbachian had mentioned, other rare treasures would gradually be included in the list of items that could be exchanged. There would always be something that people would risk their lives for. As soon as Renbachian explained the point redemption system, everyone couldn't sit still anymore. All of their faces were filled with excitement. Renbachian was also very satisfied with everyone's reaction. This way, the temptation he gave them was great enough, and he wasn't afraid that they wouldn't work hard. As for the points that could be exchanged, well, this was good enough to look at. Although it wasn't unattainable, it would still be difficult for even a spirit will expert to achieve it. If it was an ordinary mission, it would probably be impossible to achieve it in a lifetime. It would only be possible if one completed many more difficult missions. If someone could really achieve it, such a person would be valuable enough for Renbachian to use rare treasures to win him over. Chapter 520. There were a total of 47 Earth Will experts and 11 Man Will experts who had become members of the Rearguard Commandery. There were 58 Baihu experts. The 11 Man Will experts were all sect chiefs or elders who had died in the investigation of the Wang estuary. Renbachian gave them some privileges, which could be considered as a favor to the descendants. At the same time, Renbachian gave each of them a quota of 22 people. They were divided into 2 small banners and 20 tiki. As for the commander, the position was left empty as it was necessary to leave something for others. The positions of small banners and commander generally required the strength of a man-will expert, and the highest a man-will expert could reach was the position of a commander. Below the small banners were the tiki, which was considered the foundation of the rearguard commandery. Below the tiki, there was a group of non-staff personnel called the strongmen. After all, the goal of the rearguard commandery wasn't only to fight and kill, but also to monitor the local area. At this time, the rearguard commandery has just been established, so everything is simple. You'd better choose carefully among the slots I'm giving you. Don't just shove anyone in. After all, these people are your subordinates and will work for you. Their ability will determine whether you can do things well in the future and determine your future prospects. In addition, you can also recruit some strongmen to assist the tiki, act as informants, or do other chores. Those who are above the tiki are considered officials, and the imperial court will naturally pay them a salary. As for the strongmen, you will need to think of a way to recruit them. Go back and prepare now. Come to me in 3 days to collect your tokens. After Renbachian explained everything clearly, he let everyone leave. After everyone left, Gongzheng scratched his head and asked, "Sir, does the imperial court have money? Didn't you just rob a fortune from Great Xia? When I came here, I heard that Great Xia and the Yin nation have cut off our salt supply. The officials in the imperial court have used that fortune to buy salt," Gongzheng said. Rinpoche nodded. He had also heard about this. After all, the Empress would receive news from Gu City every 2 or 3 days and would occasionally tell him about it. The difficulties are only temporary. After we conquer the Yin nation, you can even take a salt bath if you want. Rinpoche smiled. I want to see the sea. I heard that there are big fish in the sea that can feed a person for a lifetime. It's like a piece of land when it floats to the surface of the sea, said Gongzheng with a grin. I want to see it too. Even though Rinpoche felt that he was talking about whales, he couldn't say for sure. The animals in this world were larger and more ferocious than those on Earth. For example, pandas ate bamboo on Earth because of the environment. In this world, they ate bamboo because they were at the bottom of the food chain. Other than eating bamboo, they probably couldn't even beat a rabbit. If it's like this on land, then the marine life in this world should be even more spectacular. That night, Rinpoche and the Empress were enjoying the shade in the courtyard, when they heard a guard report that someone who claimed to be an old friend was here to see Rinpoche. They knew that the person they were waiting for had arrived. He asked someone to bring him to the front hall. Sure enough, it was Su Qing. When Su Qing saw Rinpoche, his face started to twitch. His facial expression alternated between black and green, as if he had eaten a mouthful of hot feces. In fact, his experience was no different from eating a mouthful of hot feces. When he saw the arrest warrant, he almost spat out a mouthful of blood. He even had the thought of fighting Rinpoche to the death. If this matter were to spread back to Great Xia, he would really become a laughingstock. He was a famous handsome man in Great Xia. Many girls in the brothels were jealous of him for a second look. At this moment, he had become a pervert who had sex with a cow after drinking in Dayo. Even if others didn't believe it, they would definitely use this matter to mock him. It was simply too vicious to destroy someone's reputation. After staring at Rinpoche for a long time, he saw that he was still drinking tea, as if nothing had happened. Finally, like a resentful wife, he complained, "Sir Run, why do you have to do this? You forgot to leave your contact information last time." Rinpoche said unhurriedly. "Look, you appeared in front of me so quickly. This means that this method is quite effective." Speaking of this matter, Su Qing's face twitched even more. After a long while, he sighed and said, "You have seen the person. Tear down those arrest warrants." Then he asked, "What exactly do you want from me?" "Send some things to the palace of Great Xia," Rinpoche said faintly. Su Qing's expression immediately became serious. "I do have a few people in the palace, but they can't do much. Their main job is to gather information. The power in the Great Xia Dynasty Palace is much stronger than you think. It's not that serious. Just help me put a few small things in the palace. You can put them anywhere, such as in the garden or in the grass. What are you going to do? Come look at this thing." Rinpoche picked up a gray cylindrical object on the table and said. It was green and had been sprayed with camouflage patterns. There was a safety switch on it. Since it didn't need to explode, the outer shell was made of ordinary aluminum. "Is this the kind you used in the north?" "I've said it's useless. It can be used against ordinary people, but it's useless against experts," Su Qing said immediately after taking a look. "It's not what you think." Rinpoche knew that Su Qing had misunderstood, and thought that he was holding a grenade. "It's not easy to plant people in the palace. I won't let them take risks easily. Let's go out of the city. I'll show you." Rinpoche called out to Shi Hu, who was outside, and went to the backyard to get Lin Xiaola, who was sleeping soundly. She even bit him. "Take this and throw it as far as you can," Rinpoche said to Shi Hu. "Okay, I'm familiar with this thing." Shi Hu was elated when he saw the thing in Rinpoche's hand. He had used it many times in Liao City, although this one was a little different. "Retreat." Rinpoche handed the thing to Shi Hu, turned around and ran back. Su Qing was puzzled. As far as he knew, This thing wasn't very powerful, but he still followed Rinpochian and ran. Lin Xiaola was sitting on the ground yawning. She looked around and landed beside Rinpochian in a flash. Sherhu was left standing there with a silly smile on his face. He turned to look at Rinpochian, rubbed his head, removed the safety ring, and weighed it in his hand. Based on his experience, this thing would explode in a few breaths' time. He didn't know why Rinpochian was running so fast. The next second his face turned green, and a pungent smell that made it hard for him to breathe filled his nostrils. His chest and head felt as if they had been hit by a sledgehammer, causing him to see stars. He couldn't even breathe, and his lungs felt like they were being squeezed tightly. Chapter 521. Don't come over. Rinpochian's face changed when he saw Sherhu running in his direction. He quickly pointed in another direction and shouted. He had a deep understanding of the persistence of this stench. Sherhu had just come over, and even if he was closer to Rinpochian, he would still be covered in the stench. Rinpochian would never forget the previous experience. As such, he quickly shouted when he saw Sherhu running in his direction. However, it was too late by the time he shouted. The speed of an earthwheel expert wasn't something he could compare with. Even if he had a head start of 100 meters, Sherhu swept past him like a gust of wind. With a wave of his sleeves, he did not take away a single cloud, only leaving behind a stench that made people want to faint. Rinpochian's face immediately turned green. Wretch! Wretch! Rinpochian quickly ran to the side to vomit, and Lin Xiaola had already run away as if she had seen a ghost. Only Su Qing, who didn't know what was going on, suddenly smelled the smell of old feces that had been sealed for 100 years mixed with something else. It made his chest tighten, and his vision blacked out. He suddenly staggered and almost fell to the ground. Wretch! Wretch! Rinpochian and Su Qing vomited on both sides. You want me to bring this thing to the palace? Wretch! This is just the aftermath. It's not even a tenth of its true power. Go to the center and smell it. Wretch! You are crazy. You just want to discuss Xia Bailong, but you don't have to do this, right? Wretch! I prepared 1,000 of them for Xia Bailong. As long as you can put them all in the palace, I guarantee that Xia Bailong will immediately move the capital. Wretch! The two of them retched for a long time before recovering a little, and gathered together to talk. As a result, when they stood together, both of them showed a look of disgust. As they stood together, the stench became even stronger. Your request is impossible. Even if you bring this thing into the palace, it will be discovered immediately if you use it. Su Qing pinched his nose and looked at Rinpochian with an ashen face. He looked at Rinpochian as if he was looking at Ultraman. The things that could explode on the battlefield with Great Xia were created by him. There was also the poisonous gas from before. Now he made this thing. This person was really unusual. Thanks to him, Rinpochian suddenly realized that sometimes, the stench was more deadly than the poison. I have a way to make this thing explode on its own at a predetermined time. Rinpochian's face turned green. He pinched his nose and stood there with a look of disgust. He didn't forget to fan the air with his hands, even though it was useless. Is it reliable? Su Qing asked with a frown. If that was the case, it would still be feasible. I can at most extend it for 24 hours, but that would be too easy to be discovered. It would be best to extend it for around 2 hours. What is your purpose in doing this? 1,000 of these things releasing their stench at the same time. Don't you think Xia Baichong's expression will look good? He gave me so much trouble, so a little revenge can be considered reciprocation. And after this, I will tell him that I did it. He won't be able to take this lying down and will send troops. At that time, your opportunity will come, Rinpochian said. Although Deyo was already fighting on 2 fronts, he wasn't worried. Almost all of Great Xia's soldiers who could fight were dead. Now, only a small number of soldiers were left in the country, as well as the ones stationed at the border of the Yun nation. Hongwu didn't feel too much pressure. As for recruiting and training new soldiers in Great Xia, the Yun nation would probably have become the Yun protectorate by then. He had enough confidence in the brains and combat power of the aboriginals. The two were complete opposites. The only thing he needed to worry about was rations. Su Qing pondered for a moment, nodded, and said, "Give me the things. I can't guarantee that all of them will be useful. 1,000 of them is too much, and it will be difficult to transport them into Great Xia's palace. However, I should be able to transport some of them. Come and collect them in 3 days, and I will give them to you. These things can only be stored for half a year. After that, they will be leaked. I hope you can get them as soon as possible," Rinpochian said. He reached a consensus with Su Qing after a few words. Rinpochian could take revenge, and Su Qing could also get the opportunity he wanted. He had no reason to refuse. "By the way, you said that the people in Great Xia's palace are very strong. As far as I know, there are only a few spirit will experts in Great Xia, right? It's not as simple as it seems. A spirit will expert has a lifespan of at least 200 years. The royal family of Great Xia has been looking for talented young people, and has accumulated a lot of strength over the past few hundred years. As far as I know, there are at least 8 spirit will experts in the palace, and at least 3 of them have condensed heaven-grade weapons." Renbachian nodded thoughtfully. 8 spirit will experts weren't even comparable to Tianjing Basin. However, this was only the palace. If the entire Great Xia was included, there would be at least 100 spirit will experts. The more people there were, the more experts there would naturally be. Fortunately, most of the spirit will experts occupied their own territories and ignored Xia Baichong. "Come and find me in 3 days." Renbachian nodded at Su Qing and turned to walk toward Jiangbei City. "Stay away from me. I will give you half a month off. Don't let me see you during this time." Renbachian's face immediately turned green when he saw Sherhu approaching him. Sherhu looked aggrieved. "Wasn't he the victim here? Who told you not to make it clear?" He thought it was the same thing as in Liao City. On the way back to the residence, people and animals scattered everywhere they passed. Zuolong and the others saw Renbachian return and came over to greet him. However, their expressions immediately changed, and they took a few steps back. They were too familiar with this feeling. Those days simply made them want to die. "Greetings, Sir Run." The 6 of them were reminded of the tragic memories of those days, and their expressions became extremely strange. "It's all right. Step back." Renbachian waved his hand and walked across the courtyard to the Empress's door. She was still watching a television series. "Your Majesty, I just met Su Qing, and he has agreed. Xia Baichong has given us so much trouble, and we can finally return the favor." Renbachian stood in front of the door and smiled. The Empress turned to look at him and rolled her eyes. Her charming and moving gaze made Renbachian's heart restless. "Why are you standing so far away? I'm afraid that your Majesty will dislike me. Why are you so weird today? Come over." The Empress didn't take it seriously. "I'll go over then." Renbachian was a little dispirited as he strode into the house. However, just as he took 2 steps in, the Empress frowned, and her expression changed drastically. She struck out with her palm, and Renbachian felt his body fly backward uncontrollably. "Your Majesty, you said that you won't dislike me. You didn't say that your body stinks," the Empress said with a cold face. "Why are you covered in it again?" Renbachian felt that he was quite unlucky and told her what happened just now. "Oh, I see that you have been working too hard these days, so I'll give you a few days off. Go back to Earth and rest for a few days," the Empress said. Renbachian was speechless. Retribution came quickly. He had just given Sherhu a day off, and the Empress immediately gave him one. "Your Majesty, have a good rest." Renbachian looked at the Empress resentfully, went out, and called 3 winged cavalry warriors to stand there. He ordered them not to move and brought them back to Earth with him. "I'm a little bee, flying among the flowers." Pow! Boom! As soon as Renbachian returned to Earth, he heard noises coming from nearby. He turned around and saw 3 winged cavalry warriors playing a finger-guessing game. One of them slapped someone, and the other was plastered to the wall. "What are you doing?" Renbachian's face darkened. "Hello, Lady Boss." The 3 of them immediately stood up and bowed. Chapter 522. Shunfeng. Ren Baqian gritted his teeth when he heard the name of the culprit. This B** starred. She was the one who taught the lady boss. She was also the one who taught the finger-guessing game. Although Ren Baqian was well aware of her identity, she was a little too daring. Of course, Ren Baqian had sufficient reason to believe that if he fired her and found another assistant, it would still be someone from the nation. Perhaps he should go abroad and find a Chinese person. Ren Baqian thought about it and asked, "Did I say anything that I shouldn't?" No. The three of them turned around at the same time. Ren Baqian was a little doubtful whether they knew what he had said, but he didn't ask any further after hearing their reply. He went upstairs, changed his clothes and called Shinfeng. "Where are you? Come to my place." Ren Baqian's voice was very calm, and he couldn't tell whether he was happy or angry. However, he was still somewhat dissatisfied with Shinfeng. Although she had been doing a good job recently, he wasn't happy to hear her try to get information out of her. "I want to resign," Shinfeng shouted at Ren Baqian as soon as she answered the call, and immediately hung up. Huh? Ren Baqian was stunned. What was wrong with Shinfeng today? He hadn't caused any trouble for her yet, but she actually dared to say that she wanted to resign? She even hung up on him? Before he could figure it out, his phone received 3 photos in a row. They were 3 selfies of Shinfeng. He saw a bald, angry, and wearing a patient's uniform. Was it a pig's head? His eyes had become slits, and one side of his face was completely swollen. He didn't know what kind of medicine was applied on it. His hair was shaved, and his head was wrapped in bandages. The background should be a hospital ward. The other photo showed his arm in a cast. Shinfeng then called again. "Did you see that? Look at what your B** starred has done. I'm not doing it anymore. I'm not doing it anymore." Ooh. Perhaps it was because she was thinking about her tragic experience, but Shinfeng actually started sobbing. This was quite rare. After all, she always had a very cold and neutral image, and it was rare to see her so emotional. It turned out that she was still a woman. Ren Baqian was a little puzzled. Was this caused by the 3 idiots below? "Have a good rest first. I'll give you a month off." He hung up the phone, ran downstairs, and saw that the 3 winged cavalry warriors who had arrived earlier were showing off to the other 3 about the things in the room. "Did you guys beat up Shinfeng?" Ren Baqian asked with a black face. "How many times have I reminded you?" "No." The 3 of them shook their heads in unison. "Not yet." Ren Baqian looked at the selfie that Shinfeng had sent and asked, "How did she become like this?" "Play little B. She's the one who suggested it. You can't blame us," the 3 of them immediately said. Ren Baqian suddenly thought of the scene he saw when he just returned. "You guys play one more round. BB, fly among the flowers." The 3 of them used rock, paper, scissors at the same time, and then, pa! The other 2 slapped one of them to the wall. "That's it. She suggested it. I didn't expect her to be so fragile." As expected, Ren Baqian was a little speechless. Shinfeng brought this upon herself, right? A sin caused by heaven could be forgiven, but a sin brought upon oneself was the hardest to bear. Ren Baqian thought for a while and warned, "Don't miss your patrol. If anything happens to Her Majesty's temporary imperial residence, no one can protect you." This wasn't Dayo, and he wasn't prepared to let these people behave like they were in the military. Speaking of which, as long as it wasn't during war, they would probably behave the same way in the military. Understood. The 3 of them were originally worried that Ren Baqian would reprimand them, but they were overjoyed when they heard this. "How's your learning these days?" Ren Baqian asked. "Those chefs are good people, and I learned a lot from them," the 3 of them said. "Huh. Chefs. Where's the teacher I found for you?" Ren Baqian was puzzled. "I didn't see the teacher." Didn't come? Ren Baqian took out his phone and looked at it. Sure enough, there were 2 calls from the tutor he found previously. He immediately called back. Then the other party immediately hung up. Ren Baqian's face immediately turned black. What was going on today? He called again. This time the other party picked up and said rather coldly, "Sir, what else do you want? Why didn't you show up at the appointed time? Are you serious?" "I went, but I was chased away. Although I'm not as rich as you, there's no need to tease me, right?" I'm just a student, and I'm not used to these things. After finishing his sentence, he hung up the phone. Who came after I left? Renbachian turned to look at the winged cavalry warriors and asked with a black face. There was a skinny and weak little guy who said he was a tutor. Sir Run, you instructed us to chase him away except for the designated people. So I chased him away. Renbachian was speechless. I'm not angry. I'm not angry. I'm not angry. Renbachian muttered as he held his head. If he were to get serious with these idiots, he would lose. The three of you can tell them about it first. Renbachian waved his hand, drove to the entrance of the university, and stuck a piece of paper on the car window. Looking for a tutor with an hourly salary of 200 yuan. Requirement. Honest. Many people saw this scene and immediately became interested. An hourly salary of 200 yuan was considered pretty good for part-time students. A one-on-one high school student's hourly salary was generally only about 100 yuan. Needless to say, Renbachian wasn't looking for a 985 university, but a 211 university. However, Renbachian didn't specify primary, secondary, or high school, and he didn't specify any subjects. This made people feel a little uncertain. Some people even suspected that he was a scammer. After all, most of the things that seemed to be very advantageous were actually scams. After a long time, a bespectacled, plainly dressed boy who looked a little thin and weak walked over and knocked on the car window. Excuse me, what kind of tutor are you looking for? The boy asked. I'm a first-year student here and have just passed the college entrance examination. You get in the car. Renbachian sized him up and said after seeing that he was quite honest. Don't worry, your standard is good enough to teach. I don't need a high standard, I just need to be honest enough. The boy hesitated for a while. This price was quite attractive, and he could get into the car at the entrance of the university where the surveillance cameras could see it. There shouldn't be a problem. At the thought of this, he got into the car. Renbachian said as he drove. I only request that you teach me Chinese, the simpler the better. Then, teach me some general knowledge. The boy was a little surprised. Some children have been living in the mountains and don't know anything about the outside world. I need someone to help them understand these things, Renbachian said. It was better to bring the boy over first. If he took out the photos of the winged cavalry, he reckoned that no one would dare to go. In fact, after interacting with the winged cavalry, one would know that even though they looked a little scary, they weren't considered bad people. After hearing this, the boy finally felt a little relieved. In his opinion, they should be children from very poor areas. Although he didn't know why the person in front of him was doing this, perhaps he was a good person? Did he adopt some children from the mountainous areas? At the thought of this, the boy immediately felt a deep sense of respect. He was born in the countryside. If it wasn't for the help of some kind people, he was afraid that he would have been like those children in the village and dropped out of school to work before graduating from primary school. As a result, he respected and liked these kind people from the bottom of his heart. Not in the city. The boy asked when he saw that Renbachian had been driving out of the city. Don't worry, I will reimburse you for your travel expenses. The time spent on the road will also be calculated according to the teaching time. There's no need. This price is already very high. The boy said with some embarrassment. It doesn't matter. This group of children doesn't know much. You might have to put in some effort, Renbachian said. I will work hard, the boy said. He swore in his heart that he would definitely help them and teach them what he knew. It wasn't just for the salary, but also because they had the same background as him. This thought persisted until Renbachian opened the door of the villa. Well, these 6 are the students you will be teaching. Renbachian smiled amiably. Chapter 523. Sir, I'm afraid I can't do this job. The boy trembled as he looked at the 6 burly men in front of him. They were 8 meters tall, more than half a head taller than Renjie, and more than twice as wide as him. They stood in front of him like a wall. Also, their bald heads, ferocious faces, and cold gazes didn't look like good people in any way. The most important thing was the crisscrossing scars on their bodies. You're telling me that they're children from the mountains? How are they like children from the mountains? How are they like children from the mountains? How are they like children? Even the legendary gangs aren't this scary, right? Are they bandits? How should I address you? Renbachian asked with a smile. Dingjie. Sir, I don't have money. My family is from the countryside, and our family doesn't earn more than 10,000 yuan a year. Dingjie looked like he was about to cry, and trembled. Don't be afraid. They are good children and very straightforward. It's their parents' fault that they look like this, not them. Don't judge a book by its cover, right? Renbachian said kindly. But they really aren't children. Just treat them like children. Renbachian said decisively. I can't do it. I feel like I'm the child. Dingjie clung to the door, and shivered like a quail being targeted by a pack of wolves. However, Renbachian had already closed the door before he could do so. He now felt that he was really unlucky today. Previously, he thought that the smiling young man beside him was a good person worthy of respect. Now he just wanted to give him back his respect. Let him go while you're at it. 300 yuan an hour. Don't worry, we are all decent people. I'm also a state employee and have a certificate. These people have been living in the mountains and are all hunters. The scars on their bodies are from hunting, and they would starve to death if they didn't hunt. They know very little about the outside world, and I don't have that much time to teach them, so I found a teacher for them. The country has said that those who get rich first will lead those who get rich later. At least spiritually, you are the first to get rich, so you need to lead those who haven't gotten rich yet. Renbachian continued to smile, and even took the initiative to increase the salary by 100 yuan. Dingjie was struggling between the high salary of 300 yuan per hour and the threat of the bandits in front of him. 300 yuan an hour, and only 3 hours a day. That would be 10,000 yuan a month, which was equivalent to his family's annual income. For him, this amount of money was enough to change the fate of his family. I don't do anything illegal, Dingjie said cautiously. Don't worry. We are all decent people. I'm a government employee. Do you want to see my proof of employment? Renbachian smiled. Yes, Renbachian's mouth twitched. This child really had no EQ. However, this child was rather honest and didn't have any schemes. It would be a good idea to let him teach these winged cavalry warriors. He would be much better than the others. Have a seat first. Renbachian pointed at the sofa and went upstairs to get his ID. When he came down, he found Dingjie sitting there awkwardly with his hands on his lap and his head almost burrowing into his pants. In front of him, there were 6 burly men staring at him with wide eyes. Well, don't worry. They just look scary. You don't have to be so restrained. Renbachian threw the ID on the table. Dingjie looked at the contents of the ID, looked at Renbachian, and carefully examined the ID. In the end, he couldn't distinguish whether it was real or fake, but he was more or less relieved. It was about the size of a fingernail. He will be your teacher from now on, and will be responsible for teaching you some basic knowledge. If you don't understand anything, you can ask him. Remember to respect him. Don't beat him, scold him, threaten him, or use him as fitness equipment. Renbachian said to the 6 winged cavalry warriors. However, Dingjie trembled with every sentence he said. He was constantly doubting whether his decision was right or wrong. Got it, lady boss. Got it, Sir Run. The 6 men became 2 voices. Call me second boss. Renbachian's face darkened. Whoever calls me lady boss again, I will strip him naked and hang him on the flagpole. You can start now. You can come whenever you have time, Renbachian said to Dingjie. As for the money, I will transfer 35,000 yuan to you first. 30,000 yuan will be your tuition fee for 100 hours, and 5,000 yuan will be your travel expenses during this period. Renbachian wasn't worried that Dingjie would run away after taking the money. He didn't have the guts. It didn't matter if he had the guts. Renbachian would show him what it meant to rule the country by law. Renbachian asked for Dingjie's WeChat number, transferred the money, and went upstairs. After a while, he came down and found that Dingjie had adjusted his emotions and was resisting his fear to ask the winged cavalry warriors. At the very least, He wanted to know what these people knew. His conclusion was that this group of people really didn't know anything. As expected, this group of people came from a mountain village that had no contact with the outside world, and made a living by hunting. Regardless of whether it was true or not, he could only tell himself that it was true. After staying in the villa for 3 hours, he got up and bade farewell, when the sky was getting dark. Since Runbachian had already transferred the money to him, it wasn't difficult to book a taxi. However, he still walked down the mountain to take the bus and tried to save every cent. Ding Jie, you found a part-time tutor? 200 yuan an hour? How is it? Is it reliable? Is it a scammer? Ding Jie was questioned by a few of his roommates when he returned to the dormitory. After all, 200 yuan an hour wasn't a small amount for students. In fact, many people saw it at that time, but many of them felt that it was a scammer. In the end, Ding Jie was the first to ask, and it actually succeeded. After Ding Jie left, there were even more people who believed that he was a scammer who specialized in scamming rural students who didn't know anything. As a result, there were people who questioned him the moment he returned. Some of them were kind, but there were also people who were waiting to see him make a fool of himself. Ding Jie didn't mention anything about increasing the salary to 300 yuan an hour. He just squeezed out a smile and said, "It's quite reliable." He thought to himself that it would be better if those people looked like normal people. He didn't even know if he had really profited this time because those people always made him feel afraid. Really? Is it a weekly or monthly knot? Be careful, his roommate warned. I have already paid a sum of money in advance. It's enough for a few days, Ding Jie whispered. Ding Jie whispered. He was truly grateful to Runbachian for this. This sum of money was too important to him. How much? Someone asked curiously. Ding Jie didn't have much contact with people and didn't know how sinister people were. He raised his hand and gestured 3,000 yuan? This person is quite generous. You have met a good person, someone immediately laughed. How do you know it's not 300 yuan? Someone immediately asked. Ding Jie has been gone for a few hours this time. 300 yuan might not even be enough for today's lesson. He just said that he paid a sum of money in advance, so it should be at least 3,000 yuan, right? Ding Jie, am I right? The person who spoke just now laughed. He was very confident in his judgment. Ding Jie opened his mouth and then nodded. In the end, he didn't mention that the other party paid 30,000 yuan in advance. However, this still made several of his roommates envious. After all, only a small number of people were rich. When they first entered university, many students had the idea of becoming tutors to earn some pocket money, but they couldn't do so for various reasons. No one expected that Ding Jie, who was the most inconspicuous, would find such a good part-time job. The next 2 days were weekends. Ding Jie left school early, took the subway and bus to the foot of the mountain, and then walked to the villa for lessons. Although Runbachian said that even the time spent on the road would be counted as class time, he didn't want to and didn't dare to do so. After 2 days, he could finally look at these 6 people calmly. Although they looked like bandits, they were very straightforward and weren't as ferocious as he had imagined, except for a few things that made him feel uneasy. For example, when he went there, he saw them lifting up their cars to exercise. Or they fought in the courtyard like in the movies, punching a big hole in the ground with one punch. Or they could eat 120 people's meals in one meal. Who exactly were they? No matter how stupid he was, he knew that there was something wrong with their identities. However, he didn't dare to ask and could only pretend that he didn't see anything. Runbachian was very satisfied with his performance. Do well. There are other jobs waiting for you if you do well. However, you have to remember that you are being paid by me. As long as it doesn't violate the law, you can't reveal anything about me here to anyone, including certain state agencies. If there are any problems, you can ask them to look for me. If I find out that you have leaked anything about me here, Huangpu River will welcome you with open arms. As Runbachian spoke, he released his imposing aura. After all, he was second only to the Empress in Dayo. Apart from the Empress, he came into contact with various top experts or generals in the army every day. The imposing aura that was imperceptibly cultivated wasn't something that ordinary people could resist. After hearing Renbaqian's words and being pressured by his imposing aura, Dingjie immediately sweated profusely and nodded like a chick pecking at rice. Well, I'm going on a mission. If you have anything to say, you can tell me when I come back. Renbaqian nodded with satisfaction. He liked this boy who didn't mix with others. He might be a little clumsy, but he was more reassuring than Shinfeng. Chapter 524. There's no more wine. One of the winged cavalry warriors pondered. There's no more wine. Another person tipped the bottle down, and a drop of wine dripped from the bottle. We could have drunk for a few more days. The three winged cavalry warriors looked at the three people opposite them. This wine was originally enough for 3 people to drink for a few days, but now that there were 6 of them, it was immediately gone. Did you bring money? The 3 of them rummaged through their pockets and pulled out a handful of silver fragments. Can it be used? I think they use another kind of money here. I've seen them take it out before. What should we do? Shall we go to the back of the mountain to hunt some prey to exchange for wine? There isn't anything big on this mountain. I have already circled around. The winged cavalry warrior who had arrived earlier had a solemn look on his face. The 6 of them stared at each other for a long time. Find someone to borrow it from. We'll return it to him after we get his salary. The next day was Wednesday. Dingjie had no classes in the afternoon, so he went to the villa again. As soon as he entered the house, he was surrounded by 6 people. What for? Dingjie said in a trembling voice as he looked at the 6 brown bears with ferocious eyes around him. There's no more wine. I didn't either. As soon as Dingjie finished speaking, he felt the air around him turn colder. I'll go buy it. Dingjie said with a long face. I'll pay you back when I get my pay. The 6 of them said. After all, it was not good to rob this bean sprout's money. It felt like they were robbing a child's candy. After a while, drink. I don't know how to drink. I'll drink. Dingjie put on a long face and drank a third of the cup in one gulp. He immediately felt as if a knife had slashed across his throat. Then his stomach was filled with heat, causing his face to immediately turn red. Little B, how do we play? I see. The 6 men whispered to each other for a long time before their gazes landed on Dingjie again. No. I really don't. You guys play. I'm sorry, I'll play. Dingjie pulled a long face. What did I do wrong? I'm a tutor. I'm a tutor. I'm a tutor. I'm not here to buy wine for you. Nor am I here to drink with you. Didn't we agree not to threaten teachers? 2 little bees, flying among the flowers, flying. Fly. Fly. Pa. One of them flew out and slammed heavily into the wall. Bang. The whole house was shaking. Dingjie's face turned green when he saw this. His dizzy mind immediately sobered up, and he said in a trembling voice, Can I stop playing? Don't worry, you are so fragile, I will be gentler. The winged cavalry beside him comforted him. Dingjie, is it the difference between dying without an intact corpse and having an intact corpse? Do you want to beat me to death? How can a real man be so timid? Another winged cavalry warrior grinned, and the scar on his face became even more hideous. But I'm really scared. I'm different from you guys. 2 little bees. Flying among the flowers. Flying. 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 Pow. Bang. Dingjie was trembling like a quail. By the time the sky turned dark, the faces of the 6 winged cavalry warriors were swollen like pigs. Miraculously, Dingjie was unscathed. Brat, you're awesome. One of the winged cavalry warriors laughed heartily and patted Renbaqian's shoulder, almost knocking him into the ground. Not bad, not bad. I didn't drink your wine for nothing today. Tomorrow, I will teach you a set of boxing techniques. It's the most powerful boxing technique in our village. Everyone practices it, and it will make the neighboring village jump up and down. Dingjie was still a little dizzy when he left the villa. When the wind blew, he felt even more dizzy. However, the joy of surviving a calamity still filled his heart. Someone is going to teach me boxing techniques? He was looking forward to it and wondered if he could become as powerful as those people. When he reached the foot of the mountain, Two people got out of a black off-road vehicle and carried him into the vehicle. He then fell into a deep sleep. When he woke up, he found himself in a room. The surrounding environment was already pretty good for him. To others, it was just an ordinary room decoration in a motel. He turned his head and saw a man and a woman sitting beside him. They were both in their 40s. "You're awake? You are? We're from the National Security Agency. Please assist in the investigation." Upon hearing about the National Security Agency, Ding Jie felt as if he had been struck by lightning. A wave of fear gripped his heart, making him almost unable to think. Seeing his expression, the two of them calmed down. This kid was easy to deal with. "I didn't do anything illegal," Ding Jie said with difficulty. "We have to ask to know whether you did or did not. Tell us about the villa on the mountain, the one you went into. Why were you there?" Ding Jie almost cried when he heard this. It was indeed because of the group of people on the mountain. Wasn't that guy surnamed Ren a citizen of the country? Could he be lying to him with a fake certificate? "Give me a glass of water first," Ding Jie whispered. After drinking half a glass of water and feeling a little better, he told them about being a home tutor. "What have they been saying these days? Tell us what you know. If I tell you, will you arrest them?" Ding Jie asked carefully. "No, but we need to know something," the man said. "Then I can't say." Ding Jie immediately shook his head. Ding Jie's reaction stunned the two of them. "Did he threaten you?" Ding Jie nodded vigorously. "We are citizens of the country. We can protect you." Ding Jie shook his head again. "Do you think the country can't protect you?" Ding Jie shook his head. "Then what are you afraid of? Do you think we can't protect you?" Ding Jie nodded heavily. The two of them were speechless. "Does your family know that you are so honest? If you don't tell us, we can arrest you." The man put on a stern expression. If possible, he didn't want to do this. After all, he still hoped to get the other party's help. However, this guy was too funny. Ding Jie trembled, but after thinking about what that person said, he mustered up his courage and said, "He said his name is Ren Baqian. If you need anything, you can look for him. Miss Qing Yuan, where's Her Majesty?" Ren Baqian had just returned to Dayo and went to the Empress's room to greet her, but she wasn't there. Her Majesty drank some wine just now and said she was bored. She went out for a walk, Qing Yuan said while wiping the table. "How long has she been gone?" Ren Baqian nodded and threw a bag of white rabbit creamy candy to her. "Less than 4 hours, Qing Yuan said with a smile. "Get someone to inform me when Her Majesty returns." Ren Baqian smiled and left. In the past, there were always various dramas of emperors wanting to leave the palace and various ministers admonishing them. This didn't exist for the Empress. As long as she didn't go to the Great Xia Palace for a walk, it was fine. With the Empress's strength, as long as she didn't run into an enemy encirclement, no one in Tianjing Basin could do anything to her. In everyone's opinion, the Empress was bored and wandering around the city or not far from it. However, at this moment, the Empress was holding a bottle of wine and standing at the foot of a mountain in the distance. In front of her was a winding mountain road that wasn't considered steep. The mountain road was about 3 meters wide and had been excavated for many years. After passing through this winding mountain road, there was a vast expanse of open space in front of her. 3 surging rivers were lying on the ground like 3 huge dragons sleeping soundly. This was the origin of the name Wang Estuary. Back then, when the Hao nation was powerful and prosperous, many literati left their writings here. The Empress looked at the mountains in front of her, drank a mouthful of wine, and floated like a fairy. Ren Baqian's movements were too slow. After staying in Tianjing Basin for too long, she wanted to return to the palace. She heard that there were a few experts here. If she killed them, the advancement of the army would be much faster. The Empress's face was slightly red, and she looked a little tipsy. She shook the wine bottle, which was still half full. With a light tap of her feet, the scenery on both sides quickly moved backward. There were a few sentries in the forest in the distance. When they saw a woman in red standing in the distance, they were hesitant about whether to issue a warning. After all, the other party was only one person, and they were afraid of making a fuss over a minor issue. In the blink of an eye, the woman disappeared. Subsequently, a gust of wind swept past the sentries. An astonishing aura rose from the forest. An old man sitting at the top of the mountain suddenly opened his eyes, and a cold glint flashed in his eyes. This aura. Is it a challenge? It's somewhat familiar. Is it Cheesy Xiao? The old man's face changed. His body blurred, and he appeared on a big rock as he looked down the mountain. It's Cheesy Xiao. A figure appeared beside him. What should we do? Retreat. Both of us aren't her match, and she won't do anything to those ordinary soldiers. But there are still our disciples. She won't do anything to them. Let's go. It will be too late if we don't leave now. Following their conversation, many people in the mountains looked up and saw a red figure emitting an astonishing aura leaping up from the forest and heading straight for the mountain peak. I'm getting tired of this. All of you, quickly come down and die. The Empress took advantage of her drunkenness and let out a long whistle that shook the wilderness. All the birds and beasts in the mountains lowered their heads. Chapter 525. Renbaqian sat on a chair and opened the box next to him. Inside were black tokens that were decorated with fish-dragon patterns. On the front were 3 blood-red words, Rearguard Commandery, and 2 red words, by who, were written on the back. The tokens were only the size of a palm, weighed about 2 ounces, and were completely made of alloy. Each of your tokens is also proof of your identity. When you meet people from the court and the Rearguard Commandery, show them first to prove your identity, Renbaqian said as he distributed the tokens. When everyone received the tokens, they found that they were extremely exquisite and had fine lines. There were no traces of carving at all, and they couldn't be imitated. Renbaqian watched from above as everyone put away the tokens and said, There are 2 tasks for everyone to complete. Please speak, sir. Everyone immediately said. Now that everyone had received their tokens and their identities had been confirmed, they could only listen to what Renbaqian said. Renbaqian never said that the Rearguard Commandery was a city gate that could be entered and exited at will. From his previous methods, everyone could guess what would happen to him if he wanted to withdraw from the battle. Renbaqian got up and opened the box next to him. He took out a few binoculars and handed them to everyone. Try it. Everyone took the strange thing from Renbaqian and asked after a while, Sir, how do we use this thing? Renbaqian picked one up, put it in front of his eyes, and took a look outside. Everyone immediately understood. One of them put the binoculars in front of his eyes and looked outside the courtyard. He suddenly exclaimed in surprise, and his expression changed. It wasn't just one person, but several people in succession. Through this thing in their hands, the distant courtyard wall seemed to be right in front of them. The little damage on it, as well as the weeds sticking out of the wall, could be seen clearly. Senior Qi, what's wrong? Someone asked in a low voice. These were all Earthwill experts who wouldn't easily be surprised by anything. At this time, they were surprised with such a thing, which puzzled others. Look. Senior Qi handed the binoculars to him. The others used the binoculars to look at things in the distance. Some even used the binoculars to look at the people opposite and were shocked. On the opposite side of the binoculars were 2 dark holes full of weeds. After taking a few steps back, they realized that they were actually nostrils. Everyone passed the binoculars to each other and took a look. When they looked at this thing again, their eyes were filled with amazement. Although this thing couldn't increase one's strength, it was very useful. This is a telescope. As long as it's within sight, everything can be magnified 10 times, which is equivalent to getting closer by 10 times. Even objects the size of insects in the distance could be seen clearly with this thing. In addition, there's another thing called night vision. It can see the human body in the distance at night. No matter how well it's hidden, it can be found immediately. I need a few people to investigate the movements at the Wang estuary. They don't need to get close. They just need to monitor the other party's arrangements. With these 2 items, I can ensure my own safety to the greatest extent. Sir Run, I'm willing to go, someone immediately said. Everyone knew in their hearts that working for the imperial court was not something they could do as they pleased. Even in the sect, it was impossible. For the first mission, Renbachian allowed everyone to register themselves. Those who took the initiative would definitely have a higher position in his heart. The binoculars and the so-called night vision goggles had increased their safety to the maximum. Everyone present was an earth will expert. As long as they weren't surrounded, it wouldn't be difficult for them to escape. If they didn't fight for such an opportunity, there was no point in joining the rearguard commandery. Sir, I'm willing. Everyone spoke up one after another. Some addressed themselves as I, some as subordinate, and some as Chun and Chung. For a moment, it was a little chaotic. A total of more than 20 people volunteered. Let's do it this way. You guys go to the Wang Estuary and Ghost Ridge to investigate the situation. It's best to figure out the composition and arrangements of the people there. Renbachian smiled. After thinking that these people used to be practitioners and didn't know much about military affairs, he said, the number of people on the other side depends on their cooking. After all, they can't eat cold food outside every day and have to cook. Renbachian roughly explained some of the things he had seen before, which surprised everyone. They didn't expect him to know these things. Everyone quivered. They would never forget those few days in this lifetime. As for the rest of you, I have another task for you. How is the recruitment of Tiki going? I've found the manpower. Well, send people to the cities in the north, a total of 37 cities. There must be at least 10 people in each city to monitor the situation in each city. Report to me immediately if there are any bad movements. If anyone colludes and plots against us, kill them without mercy. At the same time, recruit strong men in the cities and hide in each city to investigate all kinds of news. Not only now, but even in the future, you have to be clear about the slightest movement in each city. After that, you will be assigned a jurisdiction. If something goes wrong in someone's jurisdiction, I will take that person's head. Renbachian said sinisterly. Yes. Everyone was shocked. After speaking, Renbachian leisurely sat back in his seat. After thinking for a while, he seemed to have nothing else to say and was ready to dismiss everyone. At this moment, a red shadow landed in front of the door. Your Majesty! Renbachian stood up and cupped his hands. The red muslin on the Empress seemed to be torn in two places. Just as Renbachian was about to ask what happened, the Empress threw two heads to the ground with a cold face. Your Majesty, this is? Renbachian was stunned and asked softly. The Empress ignored him and walked away from the door. Qing Xianjun. Fox Roji. Everyone was shocked when they saw the two heads on the ground. Huh. Renbachian thought for a while. He had heard of these two names before. They were two of the 18 Earth Will experts in Tianjing Basin. In particular, Fox Roji. Most people would think that this name belonged to a woman, but it was actually a man. When he was young, he was called Young Fox because he liked to put on makeup. Even when he was older, he was still the same. Many people secretly called him Fox Roji. If he remembered correctly, Zuocheng was injured by the two of them a few days ago. Sure enough, it's the two of them. Everyone whispered. They seem to be at the Wang Estuary, right? Qi Zixiao went to the Wang Estuary? Everyone was shocked. The Empress actually went to the Wang Estuary to kill these two spirit will experts? Everyone knew that the Empress was very strong, and the battle at Mount Wu had proven this point. However, the Empress went to the Wang Estuary to kill two people, and came back without any injuries. This still surprised everyone. With a top expert like the Empress and the winged cavalry around, the revolutionary army in the south wouldn't be able to resist them. Surrendering was indeed the right choice. Otherwise, they would end up like these two people. Renbachian snorted. The person who spoke earlier immediately realized that he had made a slip of the tongue. He quickly lowered his head and said, It was a slip of the tongue. Please forgive me, sir. Renbachian squinted at him, memorized his appearance and said, Now that the two spirit will experts at the Wang Estuary are dead, you can leave with peace of mind. Yes. Many Baihu who were heading to the Wang Estuary were in high spirits. Chapter 526. Renbachian distributed binoculars, night vision goggles, and another type of tiki tag for everyone to distribute. The tiki tag was also black and covered with animal patterns without any words. After everyone left, Renbachian called Zwilung and the other 5 over and instructed, "Find a house and temporarily use it as a place for the rearguard commandery to handle affairs. They will collect information and get someone to sort it out before handing it over to me. In addition, check the Wang estuary. You guys will follow them and see if there are any people with bad intentions or suspicions of leaking information. It's better to kill the wrong person than to let them off." The 6 of them tensed up because Renbachian still didn't fully trust them. However, this was normal. After all, there was a spy who snuck in and even tried to assassinate Renbachian. Among the remaining people, not all of them were of one mind. After Renbachian finished speaking, he saw that they understood and instructed, "You may leave." After tidying up his clothes, Renbachian strolled to the backyard and suddenly stopped when he was halfway there. He saw a girl sitting in the yard beside him in a daze. The fool that was brought back from Earth. These days, the guards didn't report anything about her. Their attention was only limited to someone delivering food to her and ensuring that she wouldn't starve to death. Other than that, they had almost forgotten about her existence. Wang Baobao had changed into a new set of clothes. She was no longer wearing the muddy clothes from before, but a set of women's clothes with a pleated skirt that was commonly seen in Tianjing Basin. She sat there quietly with her eyes focused on the ground. No one knew what she was looking at. Renbachian walked over, followed her gaze, and saw 2 insects that looked like a beetle on the ground. A duel. "Do you remember anything?" Renbachian stood in front of her and asked faintly. There was no response. "Who changed your clothes?" Renbachian asked again. Wang Baobao looked up at him in a daze before lowering her head to look at the 2 insects. "Guards!" Renbachian shouted. "Sir Ren. Who changed her clothes?" Renbachian wanted to know the answer to this question. "It was Miss Qingyuan. I felt that her clothes didn't look good here, so I got someone to get her a new set of clothes to change into. Oh, that's all." Renbachian waved his hand, looked down at Wang Baobao, and turned to leave. From the beginning to the end, Wang Baobao didn't react at all. When Renbachian arrived at the Empress's room, he saw that she was taking a nap on the bed. The door was open, and Qing Yuan and Hong Yuan were nowhere to be seen. Seeing this, Renbachian didn't disturb her. He waited in the courtyard for a long time before he heard the Empress wake up. "Your Majesty." Renbachian stood in front of the door and cupped his hands in greeting. He saw the Empress sitting on the bed. Her eyes were a little blurry, but she regained consciousness very quickly. "Is everything all right now?" the Empress asked softly. She got up and walked out of the house to feel the temperature outside. "I'm here to see Her Majesty." Renbachian smiled and asked, "Did Her Majesty go to the Wang estuary?" "I just went out of the city for a stroll. I saw 2 people acting suspiciously outside the city, so I casually killed them," the Empress said casually. "Your Majesty, you have changed." Renbachian lamented bitterly. "Your Majesty, you have learned to lie and become tsundere. It wasn't like this before. Could the 2 of them run out of the city together? Sneaking around? Who could believe it?" The Empress glared at him with her beautiful almond-shaped eyes. She had an expression that said, "I'll paste you to the wall if you don't explain yourself." Renbachian felt a chill down his spine and changed his words. Your Majesty's bearing is getting more and more amazing. Even spirit wheel experts are like weeds in front of Your Majesty. Of course, with Your Majesty's strength, you can naturally treat them like weeds. With Your Majesty's achievements at such a young age, I wonder what level you will reach in the future. Just thinking about it makes me look forward to it." The Empress raised her head and thought about it. She also didn't know what level she could reach. "Are you injured, Your Majesty?" Renbachian asked with concern. "These 2 people are just a piece of cake for me," the Empress said faintly. "That's good. There's no need for Your Majesty to pay attention to these people in the future. If you make a move every time, what's the use of the court officials and the soldiers? You guys are too slow," the Empress said faintly. "I kind of want to return to the palace. If Your Majesty is bored, Why don't you return to Lan City first? With Sir Shi and the winged cavalry here, there shouldn't be any problems, Rinpochian whispered. We'll talk about it later. She walked in the courtyard and looked at a cluster of unknown flowers in front of her. They were pink and very fine, but they were also very beautiful. I feel that this flower is more suitable for your majesty. Rinpochian picked the largest flower in the courtyard from the side. It was much bigger than his palm. It's too big. The Empress was a little disgusted. A man's romance should be as big as possible. Rinpochian chuckled. The Empress didn't understand what he meant. She stared at the joke in front of her for a moment before walking out. Rinpochian followed the Empress around the city. During this time, they met many people from the rearguard commandery heading toward the north and south of the city. When they saw the two of them, they quickly dismounted and saluted. After the two of them passed, they continued to move forward. This was the first time that many people saw the Empress, and her appearance amazed them. After another day, a batch of sheep and cows was delivered to Jiangbei City. This lifted the spirits of the soldiers in the city, and they finally didn't have to eat grass every day. Although it wasn't bad to eat occasionally, it was really unbearable to eat it every day. Accompanying them were 3,000 reinforcements from the Protectorate of the South. At this time, almost all the available troops of the Protectorate of the South had been deployed. There were already 9,000 soldiers from the Protectorate of the South and 700 winged cavalry in Jiangbei City. They had to face more than 250,000 to 300,000 soldiers from the south. Although more than half of them were new soldiers, the pressure was still not small. Not only did they have to win, but they also had to eliminate the rebels while minimizing casualties. Their only advantage was that they completely defeated the other side in terms of high-end strength. After losing 2 spirit will experts, the other side was only left with 7 people. In addition, there was a group of people including Li Mengyuan, Su Pingji, Yao Jingyan and their families. There were a total of 70 people. Previously, they were kidnapped by Li Qianqiu to lead the way in Great Xia. In order to survive, they simply surrendered to Li Qianqiu. Later, Li Qianqiu kidnapped their families. After returning to Dayo, they were thrown into a small city along the way. In Lan City, the laws were stricter, and these foreigners had an easier time. In particular, the foreigners in Lan City were all sent by the big clans that controlled the trade routes. In those small cities, except for a few unscrupulous merchants, there were almost no foreigners to be seen. The commoners there were extremely repulsive toward foreigners. One could imagine the life of these Great Xia people. They were bullied almost everywhere and had to swallow their anger. Otherwise, they would be beaten up, and in serious cases, they might even lose their lives. They almost didn't dare to go out. However, they were kidnapped, so how much property could they have? It didn't take long for everything to be consumed. They didn't have land, didn't know how to graze, and were ostracized. If this continued, these people would probably starve to death in less than 2 months. The 3 of them were privately blamed by their families. Under such circumstances, it was better for the 3 of them to give up their lives than for their entire families to end up in such a situation. These words made the 3 of them speechless. Just as these people were privately discussing whether they should escape back to Great Xia, find a small village, and live incognito, an order gave them new hope. Rinpochian saw the 3 of them at the newly established rearguard commandery. He saw that the 3 of them were tanned, skinny, and their clothes were full of stitches. You guys are a little miserable. Rinpochian couldn't help but say. He had heard a little about what happened to the 3 of them, but he didn't expect them to be so miserable. Sir, if you have any orders, we will go through fire and water without hesitation. We only hope that you can give our families a place to settle down. The 3 of them said loudly with respect and hope in their eyes. This was the look of hope after everything had been obliterated by reality. Are you all scholars in Great Xia? Rinpochian asked. Yes. We originally came out to travel before the examination, but all sorts of things happened later on. The 3 of them looked like they couldn't bear to look back at the past. What do you know? Rinpochian asked. I know about all the classics and ancient books. I also know something about mathematics and the like, the 3 of them answered. 156 plus 611 minus 203 plus 24. What's that? Renbachian asked casually. It's 540, sir. One of the thin and small men answered. What's your name? Renbachian finally met someone who could add, subtract, multiply, and divide verbally after coming to this world. This made him feel like he had discovered a talent. Sir, I'm Yao Jingyan. What about you guys? Renbachian looked at the other two. I'm Li Mingyuan and Su Pingji. The other two quickly answered. The three of them were very humble. Even in Great Xia, their knowledge was considered superior among the younger generation, so they were naturally a little arrogant. However, after experiencing a series of events, that arrogance had long been worn away. The three of you will work in the rearguard commandery for now. You will be responsible for sorting out and collecting all kinds of information. If you do well, you will be promoted. As for your families, I will get someone to make arrangements for you. Renbachian said faintly. In his mind, these three people were useful. After all, they couldn't return to Great Xia now and had almost no way out. Instead, they were more reliable than some people in Tianjing Basin. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.